Welcome to the April 10th regular board meeting of Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. And this afternoon, we have the privilege of listening to some music from the Gateway Orchestra. And I'm hoping that Miss West can introduce your students to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. I have here a quartet that was formed by student initiative because they wanted more talent. And so I got this group together because they all have really good skills, and we've been meeting 2 days a week in the morning since December. They're preparing a quartet by Telemon, Quartet in G, for the junior level solo and ensemble, which is in May. And they're learning all 4 movements. Today they will perform for you 3 movements, Presto, Largo, and Allegro. And so the students are 2 7th graders, Austin Lynn, please stand up when I introduce you, and he's been playing the violin for 4 years. He was in our 6th grade orchestra last year. And the other 7th grader is Kayla Shen. She plays the viola and has been playing for 6.5 years. And then we have 2 8th graders that we're looking forward to having at Jackson High School next year. Our cello, Ian Todd, and he's been playing the cello for 4 years. And Lucas Liu, violinist, who has been playing violin for 3 years. So they all have really excellent skills, and they're just an absolute pleasure to work with. So I will turn it over to them to play at Quartet in G.
Melody, how about bringing the students up with you so that the board can meet them? They really did a good job supporting the restart of the whole orchestra program and providing funding to the budget for this orchestra program, as well as expansion throughout the district. So if you don't mind, I'm sure the board members would like to meet the individual students and love to have their picture taken with the artists.
Did you get yours? Did you get yours? Are you sure? Yeah. Okay.
All that practice.
Yes, I've seen that before. Musical. That's fun.
Maybe I can catch you before everyone sits down. Do we have a mic? Yeah.
Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
Well, everything else, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Andrews,
Present.
Director Lassane,
Present?
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Wenta, Student Representative Parikh,
Present.
Student Representative Palat.
Present. Thank you. Our first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Comey, you please introduce tonight's agenda.
Yes, consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business, a segment for board comments, one for superintendent's report, a segment for strategic progress reporting, one for information systems. No, not information systems. That's my old job. One for information items, a segment for unfinished business, and a segment for upcoming agenda items. Although we did not have a segment for recognition this evening, what we did do this evening is expand the call to order so that we could hear from the Gateway Quartet. We're delighted to have them with us, and I want you to know as well that we'll have students performing from other schools over the next couple of months before school is out. We published this agenda to you considerably earlier than we typically do. Therefore, there were more than the usual number of adjustments to the agenda. So let's call it a revised agenda this time around rather than one that we've just edited a bit. So the following changes have been made since publishing the agenda. Item 4.1, adoption of the agenda, was updated with a revised timing sheet. Item 7.2, approval of the personnel report, was updated to include some additional personnel changes that occurred over the last several days. Item 7.6, acceptance of the Washington State Auditor's 2017 audit report, was updated to include the final published audit documents. The auditor shares drafts with you at the exit, and then they provide us the final documents afterwards, which we may then publish. Item 7.16, approval of the amended and restated addendum number 1 to the YMCA of Snohomish County Special Facilities Use and Services Agreement, was updated with a revised addendum to accommodate expanded pool use from that which we originally expected. Item 8.1, superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting, as is customary for our regular meetings. Item 12.2, policy 2312, copyright compliance, proposed revision was revised to include several data slides in the presentation. Item 14.1, special meeting April 17 was added to reflect the rescheduled capital planning board work session. You may recall this was the meeting that we decided to cancel because of some things that got in the way of our meeting that evening. Item 14.2, special meeting April 26 was removed because the high school art reception will not have a quorum of the board attending. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. Please note this is not the point in your agenda. To request items be removed from the consent agenda, that occurs a bit later. In all other respects, the agenda is as we published it to you, and we ask your approval of this amended agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Lassane to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Which brings us to recognitions this evening. As Dr. Cohen mentioned, we had the pleasure of having the Gateway Quartet in the boardroom tonight, and will not be having any other recognitions this evening, so we will move to public comment. And the board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in its meetings. Dr. Cohen, are there any requests for comments this evening?
Yes, there are this evening.
Okay. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome you to this meeting. School board meetings are designed to conduct district business in public. We welcome ideas and opinions presented in that same spirit. Dr. Cohen, would you like to offer some guidelines for public comment?
Yes, the green light signifies the start of the 3 minutes. The yellow light indicates a 30-second warning, and the red light indicates the expiration of the speaker's time. The first speaker this evening is Bruce Goochman, a resident of the district, and he would like to speak with you about eminent domain.
Thank you. My name's Bruce Goochman. This has been an ongoing issue I'm sure you guys all know about, and I just have a little thing I wanted to read for the board. To the board of the Everett School District. First, I want to thank you for your efforts in making this a more fair action by your last vote. But I have to say that I feel I have been very kindly bullied by the staff and by your lawyers. First and foremost was the withholding of funds. Funds deposited into the court in October or November did not become available to me or to us until, sorry about that, I hit the keyboard, until March 29th, which was 17 days before we had to be out. You know, so it's been a real hardship. I said, put in here, let me restate that March 29th was the first monies that we received from this action, first payment, and that was 17 days prior to our move-out date. Still not having received the balance from the sale of property monies, nor is there a timely, I don't know what I wrote. Anyway, my thinking kind of gets jumbled when I'm in front of so many people. I'm sorry. April 6th, the moving expenses became available, but they were less than half of the estimated moving costs that I got from the movers. As a result of these delays and the lack of funds, I will be leaving most of my business inventory and some of my personal property behind. We just don't have the time to do it ourselves, nor the funds to have somebody do it for us. So it looks like we'll be taking what we can and leaving the rest, cars, boats, trailers, and $100,000 probably of my business inventory. My retirement is my business inventory, you know, so that's what I have to retire on. We would like to encourage the board to investigate this action and the determination of the mediator, as I don't think your instructions were taken into consideration for moving expenses and humanitarian aids. I understand that the lawyers are trying to minimize the expenses, but at what point does this become misuse of powers? If there is to be an investigation into this matter, please let me know, as I may change how I move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Second speaker is Christine Messer, and she is a resident of the district and wishes to address the board on the topic of eminent domain.
Hi, my name is Christine Messer, and I'm Bruce Guchmit's partner, 14 years, and I've lived at 4440 174th Street Southeast in Bothell, the property that's being taken by eminent domain. I've been there for 14 years. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I'd like to thank the Everett School Board members for your compassion for us during this process. It's been stressful and interesting, I'll say that. Okay, our original move-out date was to be March 31st, but because of the tie-up of money, we were extended 2 more weeks, or basically 16 days. The money was deposited into the courts by November of 2017, but not dispersed to us until March 29th. That caused us to borrow heavily and to buy our house and to plan our move. We had absolutely no money, none, to plan this move until 17 days before we had to be permanently gone from our lifelong family home. I would like to state that I feel the money was mishandled and withheld until the very end so as to be leveraged to make us take a smaller amount than we felt the property and moving expenses were worth. Judge Carroll's work was appreciated at the mediation, but he failed to give a price for the humanitarian concerns that the Everett School District offered. I am here to appeal to you in that manner, or in that matter. I'm including a part of the copy of the letter that I sent to the mediator, and I hope it will help you in coming to a conclusion of the money value of humanitarian concerns. I'm sad to have to leave my home in such a destructive way, but I'm glad we have a home and a future to look forward to. Getting to today has been extremely stressful, and I hope to never face something like this again. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts, and we'll make sure that each board member gets a copy of your letter. If you would like to leave that, please, with us before you go. Thank you. Okay. Any further public comment?
No, ma'am.
Okay. At this time, we are on to section 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, would you please review tonight's consent agenda for us?
Yes, the board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask questions about the items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business and the remaining items are automatically renumbered. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published, and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. Would any director like to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Okay, next is board comments. I actually need to it's board and what do we call this? Board?
We call it board comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's really board and student representative comments. It makes me think maybe we should make sure to change that at some point. And I know that we all have a lot to say probably tonight because we've just been to a 3-day national conference. And we're able to take in a lot of new and interesting information. Given the length of tonight's meeting, I would request that each director maybe keep their comments to a couple minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to share what they've been up to and what they learned at the conference. So tonight, why don't we start on my right? And does our student representative have anything to share this evening? Okay.
Maybe a good break?
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed the week off, but I very much missed going to school, which I guess is crazy. But I was told by
That's
many
actually,
that
we
was-
think that's a good thing.
We like to hear that.
I think Principal Shepard thinks it's a really good thing.
I enjoy going to school thoroughly. So
Did you get to sleep in?
Yeah, probably more than I should have, but you know,
That's okay, too.
It was a good week of sleeping past noon. So
Recharged and ready to go.
yeah,
Good. Excellent.
I
Director-
just want you to know none of the rest of us remember what it's like to sleep past noon.
I don't think my body could do it. I wrote notes so that I can be more concise. Had a lovely NSBA, and I'll just say what I saw. The things that I was most proud of are sort of three that I think could bring new things to our district and also some recognition to our district, which was sort of surprising on the last day. Was able to go to the Austin School District bond presentation, a $1.05 billion bond. They also have like 90,000 students, so perspective. But really the districts, the website, the district education that happened, the communities, how they engaged and communicated to the community from the district level, I think gives us opportunities as we move into our 17th meeting about our future with the bond. Next, I went to a presentation. The Knox County Schools has a very high poverty in an old factory kind of place. They have petroleum and other things there. A service, something I haven't heard before, the community schools, where they really do leverage their buildings after hours for to help students with their academic and life readiness. And so they have bike clubs at some schools, garden clubs at other schools, all done through community partnerships and grants. They do say they leverage the petroleum companies near them to give to the schools because of the problems they cause to the neighborhood. But anyway, they are about a 60,000 district, and their programs serve about 60,000 of their students who are 90% free and reduced lunch and 70% non-white. And in the time that they've done it, one of their schools, which was the first school that has been using this community school program for a while, they have double-digit changes in their test scores. And at one grade level, actually a 31% change in the state test scores. So just, I think having that extended day, and there's parent training and other things that happen. Then the last thing I went to was the Ed Leader 21 session on something we've been working on for a while now, the portrait of a graduate, really looking at that college career and life ready. What does this graduate look like? And there were probably 150 to 200 people in the room, maybe if I could guess. And the leader did call out Everett's adoption of 21st century skills on the report card, which a couple of people were like, that's you. And then a couple of people afterwards from districts around us at the airport were like, wasn't that nice you were called out? So just a recognition to the staff of the great work. I did share that was a really heavy lift to get that done. But that one school does put a cover sheet on their report cards really about what those 21st century skills are, to remind the parents really what those codes are, what our expectations are, sort of what our high school readiness presentation is going to be. And I just saw that as an opportunity. So I think this is a time for us to learn what we can bring back to our district. So hopefully I didn't talk too long.
Good job. 2 minutes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I followed direction well.
Oh, my God.
Director Anders?
I also enjoyed the national conference. I think overall the best thing about a national conference is just going and being a part of something much larger than our district and seeing the thousands of people who are there supporting public education. Attended some really interesting sessions, everything from funding nutrition programs, which they talked about the possibility of the government moving towards grants instead of per meal reimbursement and the damage that could do to some districts. Attended one on capital planning. I forget the state exactly this district was in, but they laid out their very extensive community engagement process, and it just looked fabulous, and it was so exciting. And then they got to the end, and they were so thrilled because they passed their bond with a 55% passage rate. It was like, that doesn't work for us. Yeah.
We did too.
Remember what state? Oh, yeah.
I don't remember this, yeah.
Anyway, they did have some good ideas. Also attended a session that was talking about what education may look like in the year 2035. Some interesting little nuggets there as well. A session on inclusion of LGBT students, a lot of valuable information there. Other ones were technology in the classroom, and then another session about legal issues surrounding technology. Again, raised a lot of questions that I will need to get answers to sometime. Just made me understand or realize that there are operations in our district that I have still to learn about. And also impressive were the speakers. Ann Compton spoke, and she was, I think, just amazing. She shared with us her experience being in the classroom when they advised President Bush that the Twin Towers had been hit by the planes, and it was riveting to hear her description of being there. And then Julian Castro was especially inspiring with his sort of background in public education and really being a good representation of the American dream and what public education can do for our citizens. So, great conference.
I also enjoyed the conference immensely. But right before I had a chance to go to San Antonio, I attended the Students of Color Conference at Everett Community College. And I can truly say that it was another packed gymnasium with students from all over this region. Everett students, Marysville students, Edmonds. I mean, it was truly packed. And I had the opportunity also to sit in on one of the panels. And in this year, it was a little bit different. The panel that I sat in on did not involve the military. It did not involve engineering. Would you believe it involved education? Those students who had the desire to become teachers or counselors, and even one student wanted to be a principal one day. Wonderful. And it was middle school. I had the chance to speak to those students, but it was just very exciting to learn that there are a lot of students within our own area, our own district, who want to become teachers. And so this is a great way to start engaging them in that process and telling them all the good things that come out of being a teacher or administrator, and your hope to be a servant and give back to the community and help students. So it was really nice to see that. At the conference, I attended so many opportunities for going places for our students. One of which, and I'm going to pass this on to Dana, and it tells us that we're doing the right thing. I attended a place called Alamo Academies. Guess what they have? They have 4 different academies. Now it's like a running start program where they get students in at 10th and 11th grade, and as they leave 10th and 11th grade, they end up with certificates, level 1, level 2, that are have the potential of going into the community, into different programs. And so these are the academies. Aerospace Academy, Information Technology and Security, Advanced Technology and Manufacturing Academy, Heavy Equipment Academy, and Health Professions Academy. Does it not say something about our signature programs that we're looking at that are already engaging? Well, as a student leaves after 2 years with a high school diploma, and in most cases, certificates, as well as an associate degree, they can choose to go on to a 2-year community college and get a further degree, or go into what they call 2+2, where they can go on to Texas University. They mentioned Texas University a lot, and AMN, Texas A&E. So it tells us we're going in the right direction, is one of the greatest things that I saw. I also had the opportunity to run into an individual who has programs for after-school extracurricular activities, and one of which was archery. Interesting. It's not weapons, but it is fun, archery. But anyway, I attended such sessions as the Next Generation Board Management. And I think in that regard, it gives us an idea as board directors how we can better serve our district, how we can better serve our community. It helps us learn. And this is what I think are good opportunities for us board members to get professional development in the type of work that we do to help students out. One session that I attended was called the Gentleman's Agreement, and it involved this community coming together to support students of color and ensuring that they go on to graduate. And most of the students in that particular program ended up graduating. The students in that program had they said it was over 90% rate of high school graduation. So they tend to find something to motivate students to stay in school and to graduate and then go on to career in college. So I did manage to talk to the superintendent about that, and he passed that along to Bill Reed over at the community college, because it's something very similar to the YDP program. So I think that's a good thing. That's running in the right direction, and I truly enjoyed the conference.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I went over.
All right, so I did not attend the national conference, but I did have a nice break nonetheless. About one hour into the start of spring break, I heard back from my last college, and I did end up getting in, and so that kind of put me into a good mood for more or less the duration of the break.
And the decision is?
I think I'll be attending Stanford University. That was the last one, so it was
Congratulations, that's excellent news.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, yeah.
That's enough.
That was a good spring break.
Good start to a spring break. Okay, well, I did attend the conference, and my focus was on community engagement and building capacity for ballot measures, bond planning, and I saw Mike Gunn get a little giddy when he heard that $1 billion bond number. Oh, what you could do with that. I also took an opportunity to learn a little bit more about CTE and went on an outing to the Culinary Institute of America, which was kind of fun. Not a program we currently have in our district, but they do a very similar they have a high school program that then feeds into the college there. And the one little tidbit that I did learn about the CIA is that they were formed in 1946 and the other CIA was formed in 1947. So they have the name first. I think probably at the end of the day, my favorite part about going to the conference is spending time with my fellow directors and having out of the boardroom conversations and experiences with each of them, a little less formal, which is always fun because I enjoy their company so much. And just delighted this evening to have the boardroom filled with music. It feels so springy to sort of listen to the beautiful music, and definitely starts the meeting off in a great way. So I think that's it. That's all of us, right? Okay. With that, oh, look, we're early. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Cohn for his update.
All right.
The superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report tonight has a little bit of good news, some sort of around the district news. We've got a gift recognition that I hope you saw in the newspaper. We've got a couple of construction updates that I think you'll enjoy. This month, we're celebrating 20 years of art shows in partnership with our Everett Public Schools Foundation. I don't know if you've seen the poster that was created for this, but a portion of it is on this title slide there. And I don't know if you had a chance to walk around the building at all, but the senior or the high school art's up, and I have to tell you, I'm not sure how many I can afford. Very much looking forward to picking one for the foundation, and then and adding some more to the collection in the building. The high school art show displays the 10th to the 26th. Middle school art show runs the 3rd to the 18th of May. And the elementary art show is May 23 to June 7. As you well know from walking around the building, we are very pleased to display the work of our student artists in the Community Resource Center. And we'd like the public to know that they're invited to view these shows during regular business hours as well. We have a couple of students from Jackson High School going to the National Conference for FCCLA, which some of you may recall used to be called Home and Family Life once upon a time, or Future Homemakers of America. That is, of course, changed like a number of the other CTE programs. This picture is of Jenna Kim and I'm going to make sure I pronounce this right. Sai Ray Allah, and they took second place in the state competition for their entrepreneurship project. Monica Anderson, who's their advisor at Jackson, confirmed that they're going to be competing at nationals in Atlanta this summer. I don't know, maybe I have to sign up as a chaperone. What do you think?
Atlanta summertime.
Okay, I'll think twice about it. Fine. Over spring break, four of our Cascade High School Future Business Leaders of America students made it to the final round for their performance event during the Washington State FBLA Conference in Bellevue. The finalist categories were business financial plan and marketing campaign events. We expect these students to advance to the national conference in Maryland this summer, which is probably not a lot cooler than Atlanta. FBLA is the premier organization for student leaders preparing for careers in business management, entrepreneurship, and technology. The Jackson High School Jack in the Bot robotics team and the Cascade High School Bear Bots both qualified to compete at the Pacific Northwest District Championship in Portland, Oregon last week. The Jackson High team will be moving on to compete at nationals. Their robotics advisor, Maggie Thorlifson, says the team ranks 6th in the district championship, and they are headed to the World Championship in Houston. Also not cool. To face, really cool, but very warm. To face teams from across the globe. Cascade High School robotics advisor Neil Palachuk and the Bruin team finished 14th out of 154 teams in the Pacific Northwest, and they are laying plans to reach the World Championship in Houston next year. We're very proud of their efforts. This is quite an accomplishment. They did very well at the regional level, at our local level, and we're very proud to be able to send them to those national competitions. Everett High School's jazz band recently participated in the Newport Jazz Festival in Bellevue. They placed first in their division in the preliminary round, and they came in as runners-up in the evening finals. They also received 2 outstanding soloist recognitions for Kara Underhill and Liam Chen, and we're very proud of the Everett High School Jazz Band as well. You may recall we let you know that the district was going to hold a reunification drill. It is not the first one that we've done. We learned a lot from the first one. We employed a lot of that learning in the March 27 drill at Memorial Stadium. These drills are really important in finding out what works, what new steps we need to add, and ironing out a few bumps in our reunification process. Students and parents from Jackson Elementary, volunteers from Snohomish County 911, the City of Everett, Washington State Government, Everett PTSA Council 7.3, American Red Cross, Everett Community College helped as volunteers, and then we also had staff from some neighboring districts who observed the drill. I want to take a moment to thank Molly Ringo for the mountain of work that goes into a reunification drill. I want to thank the kids who helped by volunteering, by participating in this, and we want to thank them for doing all of that work despite the very unpleasant weather that day. So this spring, students in grades 5, 8, and 11 will take the new Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. The assessment team has held 2 webinars for parents to help them explain the new science assessment. Dr. Matthews demonstrated how parents can access I think that we're calling it the WACAS now. Is that the abbreviation we're using? The WACAS training tests online. They walk through training tests at these webinars, and they explain the embedded online tools that students can use. So we're trying to prepare the parents for the assessment process as much as we are the students. And I'm jumping around on the screen because my finger hit the button at the wrong time. Gift recognitions. Now, you haven't seen this in your consent agenda yet because I don't know that we've received an estimated value and whether or not it's over $5,000. But we want you to know that Music for Life obtained what they call a just as new Kohler and Campbell baby grand piano for Everett High School's music teacher and her students. Megan Vintner and the Everett High School students have been looking for a baby grand to replace the one which is simply wearing out at Everett High. And this piano is expected to serve the students for decades. Thankfully, the Music for Life co-founder and President David Endicott, who I think most of you have met at one time or another, jumped in to help us and hunt for this replacement. David also, by the way, found the baby grand that's now resting comfortably in the atrium here, and it's available for student performances and some staff performances. Not for just pounding on the keyboard, but, for music making. So we're looking forward to that as well. North Middle School's modernization. A good thing it's not a national news broadcast, don't you think? North Middle School's modernization bids came in today. The result is a bid that my notes tell me came in at $39,925,000 for the base bid plus the two alternates. It was $3.6 million lower than the most recent cost estimates, which is really good news. It is $7 million higher than the amount that we estimated when we put the bond together, and we would of course expect that would be covered by state construction assistance funds program monies. May 8 is the date that we will ask you to award the contract. The company is Spee West Construction at Edmonds, the low bidder. They've worked with us on Forest View, the Monroe Elementary School replacement, the Garfield modernization, the Everett High School Little Theater modernization, and the Eisenhower Middle School modernization. So I think that's a big package of good news. Everett High School's main building is also out to bid. Bids are due on the 17th. The project includes replacing the rooftop mechanical units, the full HVAC controls, upgrades to the building. We're expecting that will eliminate all the leaking that we get from time to time from the old equipment. Sequoia High School's cooling tower and HVAC controls are due for upgrade this summer. Project bids on April 19th. These are the school visits for the last month, and I think one of those two visits to Sequoia was for the family meal. It was, I believe, the baked potato breakfast, lunch kind of a thing, brunch, and it was a lot of fun. Staff, volunteers, families did a very nice job helping with all of that. Just another quick note, by the way, on construction kind of things. The baseball field at Memorial Stadium is substantially complete. The first high school practice is the day after tomorrow. The first game is on Friday. I sat at Rotary Lunch today with the general manager of the Aqua Sox, and he tells me that it's very unlikely that games are going to get rained out anymore in the future.
When's the first game? Time-wise? Who is it and when is it? Do you know?
Are you talking about the high school kids? If I might have just a moment to pull up my calendar. It says that the first baseball game starts at 4 o'clock, and it's Mount Lake Terrace versus Everett High School. Okay. I want to thank all of you for your contributions, the time and energy you invested in the state conference, the national conference, and I too enjoyed thoroughly Ann Compton. I think she was probably as much a favorite as was Dan Rather and Condoleezza Rice in previous conferences. I thought that type of a speaker who can share with you remarkable events in history in the country from a firsthand perspective is just not something that you get to experience every day. I thought she was wonderful. I also have to tell you, the steel drum band from Lexington, Kentucky, brought tears to my eyes. There were several speakers and there were several student groups that performed. I called one of the high schools on the way and asked whether or not they'd like a steel drum set right away. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of space to store those things, but that was a lot of fun. I have to tell you, the Riverwalk was a lot of fun. Our hotel was located, as was the conference center, right on the Riverwalk, and I was so impressed with what San Antonio has done to welcome people to its community and to develop an environment where you can go out at all hours of the day and night, or at least most of the hours of the night, and be safe and walk around and enjoy entertainment and meet people and enjoy some food. I have to tell you, I'm very much looking forward to Everett developing along those lines. I don't know if you saw, but the construction's underway. I drove by the naval station today, and that construction work is happening. The big pillars going in for the
bridge.
The big bridge, yeah. So I'm really excited about that future. That's probably all I need to say about the conference. You'll see all of our attendance in the minutes coming up. So that's the superintendent's report for tonight. Thank you all for the great conference trip, and I, for one, am delighted to be home.
Thank you. And before Mr. Fleckenstein gets up and begins, something that the directors talked about while we were at conference is how easy and wonderful our lives are because of Darlene. And all the work that you put into getting us reservations at the right hotels that are right across the street and so convenient, and the great restaurants that are close by. And I mean, you do it so early and you do it so well, and then you give us these little packets that tell us exactly where we need to be when, and it's just really great. And we are fortunate to have you and taking care of that work, so thank you. It truly adds to the experience of the conference because of that. There's no stress with logistics, so really appreciate that. So with that, we are moving on to our strategic progress monitoring this evening, and we are looking at high school readiness. And I think you have a whole lot of information to share with us this evening.
Yeah, a whole lot, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so. As you have noticed, spring has sprung outside, and anybody who's worked in a middle school knows that once spring break is over and we're in those last couple months, spring is everywhere. The energy is buzzing. And one of the big things that our 8th graders are focused on is they start to feel the pull of high school on them, the excitement that they are soon going to be in our schools, working with siblings and friends that have already moved through our middle school system. So it's with that spirit that I'm here to share with you our high school readiness report and our indicators to give the board a snapshot and update on the work that has been going on first semester in our middle schools. Preparing students for high school success requires a focus on academic support in key core content areas, attendance, and other systems. This evening, we will take a look at the multiple ways in which students are being prepared for high school and how our students have performed on the high school readiness indicators through first semester. Our objectives for this presentation is to highlight the multiple strategies we are using to prepare 8th grade students for high school, review the high school readiness historical trends and this year's first semester data around the indicators with an equity lens, and then to share with the board our next steps in our work to support our students for high school readiness. The high school readiness indicators directly support attainment of our strategic goals to ensure students are college, career, and life ready, and provide equitable access to our rigorous courses in our middle schools. High school readiness indicators also monitor middle school progress towards meeting our key performance outcomes, including that 100% of students graduate in Everett Public Schools. Just to give a quick refresher to the board, the high school readiness flyer that we provide our students and families at 8th grade transition conferences is a means of proactive monitoring of student progress and essential for continuous improvement. The high school readiness indicators are an early warning and progress monitoring tool for our schools that they can use to support our on-time graduation efforts before students arrive in high school. And just to quickly reacquaint the board to the readiness indicators, level 4, or the dark green band that you're looking at, is indicated by students who are earning a B or better in all 7 of their classes at the middle level. And if they happen to be in an advanced pathway course or a high school level course, that they are earning a C grade or above. In addition to that, it ensures that they have exceeded a level 4 on the SBA Smarter Balanced Assessment, and that they have successfully completed the Washington State history requirement. As you go down the readiness indicators, a level 3 student is passing all of their classes with a C level grade or above. Level 3 also is meeting or exceeding on the Smarter Balanced Assessment. They have met the Washington State history requirement. and that their attendance is 98% or above. And one of the things that I'm going to be sharing with the board based on feedback from last year's presentation is a different view of attendance and how we are currently working with our students in our schools to monitor student absences. And it's going to give you a more accurate snapshot in how our students are doing relative to chronic attendance issues. And then for our level 2 students, those are students who have earned 1 or more Ds in their courses. There's 7 courses this first semester and have not yet to meet standard on the SBA assessments. And finally, our level 1 students that we will highlight or discuss, share with you in the presentation are students who have earned 1 or more Fs in their coursework and have yet to pass the Washington State history graduation requirement or meet standard on the SBA. The indicators also inform the supportive work of our schools to engage students in rigorous coursework in middle school with the potential to earn high school credit. This directly supports the 24 credit requirements our current 8th and 9th grade students must fulfill to earn a high school diploma. One of the most valuable steps for high school readiness is the 8th grade transition conferences held at each middle school at the end of March every year, which we have just completed right before spring break. High school principals, counselors, and staff join with their middle school colleagues to and meet with each student and a parent guardian to review and personalize their plans to fulfill the 24 credit requirements and align their plan for their college, career, life goals, and interests. Each year, our transition conferences become more informative for both the middle school and high school staff participants, and it also provides our students and their parent guardian an opportunity to ask questions with both a high school and a middle school staff member present to address any questions or concerns they may have and create a positive initial contact with their high school to build relationships that support their students' individual needs. We continue to use the Naviance online tools to help our students explore and plan for college, career, and life readiness, culminating in the 8th grade year in their high school and beyond plan as they exit the 8th grade Naviance program, which directly aligns to their course scheduling for 9th grade and their transition meetings. Using Naviance, principals receive weekly updates on students' Naviance participation and progress towards completion of the 3 lessons that are presented here in the graphic to the right for each grade level. When compared to last year's student participation in the Naviance program, we see the same percentages of student participation this year in our middle schools across all 5 schools. Each of our schools are making steady progress on completing the 3 Naviance lessons in each grade level by the end of this school year. And so now I'd like to transition to some of the historical data that we monitor in our middle schools to prepare our students and to also support them in their college readiness. So as you know, equity is a core value of our school district. Supporting our students to apply for the college-bound scholarship is one support that we provide our students and their families to help promote learning and access to higher education after their high school diploma. Taking a look here in the next 5 slides at each of our schools' historical progress on completion of college-bound scholarship rates, we can see here for the class of 2021, which is our current 9th grade students, from Eisenhower, 89% of them had completed, of eligible students had completed and submitted a college-bound scholarship. It's important to know that these particular numbers in terms of completion and acceptance are dependent on parents filling out the forms. That has been a traditional roadblock to getting the forms back from families to then get them submitted to the state. And so our schools work on developing their systems to engage parents while they're at the schools to actually get them to sign the forms and return them then, as opposed to waiting for them to bring them back or a student to return them. Taking a look at Evergreen Middle School, last year 87% of eligible students had completed their college-bound scholarships. For Gateway Middle School, 137%. Now, that number is above 100%, and it's only to say that from the moment in 7th grade when these students were identified as a cohort of eligible students, Gateway's student population grew for the number of students who are eligible to complete an application for this college-bound
And
scholarship.
just to clarify, sorry to interrupt, but this is the percentage of students who are eligible completing the application?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's why it exceeds 100
Yeah.
at times. Yep. And then for Heatherwood Middle School, last year, 109% of eligible students completed theirs. And then for our North Middle School students, 89% completed there. And it's great to point out for North Middle School that each of the last 4 years, they've had a steady increase in completion, and just great work that they do to engage their families. So holistically, in summary, when we look at our college-bound scholarship rates, they have gone up from last year. Last year in 8th grade, 57% of students district-wide had completed. This year, 69% have completed them. In 7th grade last year, 39% at this time of year had completed them, and this year we're at 51%. And what that shows for both our 7th and 8th grade student groups right now, that we're 12% above where we were at the same time last year in terms of completion rates. So that's a very good sign that we're going to see college-bound scholarship completion and submissions increase from our last year's levels. Positive trend. Our school improvement plans in our middle schools the last several years have focused on aspects of high school readiness indicators, a few of which are listed here on the screen. And as we go through the indicator data for first semester, you're going to see the evidence of our students' progress and the schools have made so far this year to meet these goals in their school improvement plans. But before we look at that school level data, I just would want to take an opportunity to celebrate and share with you the hard work and performance of our middle schools in Everett Public Schools. The graph that you're looking at here shows the percentile rank for ELA and math performance combined for our middle schools, and with the x-axis being the percent of poverty or free and reduced lunch meal eligible students. And I know that in the saucers you have seen this particular graph individually at your middle school saucers you may have attended, but when you look at it with all 5 middle schools at once, what it reflects is that all of our middle schools are performing well above the median, and that's that diagonal line that you're looking at right there, our best fit line. It also shows that there are very few circles which indicate a school somewhere in the state of Washington for that demographic or that band of free and reduced lunch that are outperforming our middle schools in Everett Public Schools. And to have all 5 of our middle schools to be well and above that median line is a definite celebration for the work that's been put into our middle schools over time. So just want to highlight that piece before we dig into data. The next few slides I'm going to present for you the core content grades as a high school readiness indicator. And reflecting back on the actual indicators themselves, just to recall, the level 4 students, or the dark green, are students who have a B or better in all of their classes. The light green is a student who has a C or better in all of their classes. Yellow is only one D, a D, one or more Ds in their transcripts. And then for red, it would be 1 or more Fs. So just to give that framework as we look at this. So our current 6th grade students from first semester this year show an increase of 1% from last year's 6th grade cohort in the percentage of level 1s and a 3% increase in level 2s. Currently, 8% of 6th graders earned 1 or more F grades on their first semester report card, while 48% earned a B or better in all 7 of their classes first semester. 29% of them, as you can see, had a C or better, and 15% had 1 or more D or F grades. Okay. This year, with feedback from the board last year, I wanted to create more of a cohort view for you to see how last year's 6th graders are actually doing this year on core content grades. So the graph that's displayed right now is this year's 7th graders, how they did in 6th grade. If that makes sense. So when our current 7th graders were in 6th grade, you can see that 49% of them were at level 4. had a B or better in all classes, 32% had a C or above in all classes, 12% had one or more Ds, and then 7% were Fs. When we look at their first semester performance this year, we can see how that has shifted. You can see that there's a 6% decrease in the percentage of level 4 students this year, same group as last year, but as they transition to 7th grade, they've hit some more struggles. And for level 3s, we see a 1% decrease, and we see an increase in level 2s and level 1s. And so when we think about the why does this might be happening, we start to see student participation in more advanced course options, and in some cases, high school credit-bearing courses beginning in 7th grade that you don't see in the 6th grade core grades. So that may account for why you see a shift into 7th grade and a decrease in the number of level 4 students and an increase of students who may be scoring at a level 1. When we look at our performance of our students for our 8th grade students last year as 7th graders, you can see their performance last year. So our current 8th graders last year in level 4 had 44% of students in all 5 middle schools earning a B or better in all classes. Okay? When we take a look at how that changed to this year, we can see that as they've come into 8th grade through first semester in 8th grade, we see an increase in the number of level 4s. We see a decrease in the number of level 3s, decrease in the number of level 2s, which is a success, and then an increase of only 1% in level 1s. So as you will also go through the presentation, you're going to see a shift of the data through middle school. And you're going to see some trends about 6th grade performance, 7th grade having a bit of a dip, and then 8th grade with some recovery, okay? And people who have worked in middle schools can tell you that 7th grade year is a very tough year for a multitude of reasons, socially, emotionally, and physically, that can kind of contribute to that. Okay? So what does the data tell us? Well, it tells us that the students' level 1 performance by subgroup is shown here on the left by ethnicity. And the results that you see in terms of red, yellow, and green are mixed. What's very interesting from this numbers point of view, so recall that this is level 1 students only, students who had at least one F on their transcripts, okay? You can see that in 6th grade, compared to last year, the number went up from 109 to 131. What's interesting to notice, though, is that the 6th grade cohort is larger than the 7th grade cohort. So when we're comparing last year's group to this year's group, it's not the same cohort size, and that will impact the sample, right? What it is important to see in this data is whether or not we see dramatic shifts when we are looking at subgroups and the number of students falling into the level 1 category. And what I would point out in this particular set of data is this is now reflective in our equity target work. And so when you look at this particular view, it also correlates to data that we can use to monitor equity targets. And I present this to you to show you the general trend by numbers, but also to make that connection towards how do we close performance and participation gaps in schools. And this particular set of data in middle school can be used to do so.
Can I just ask, make sure I'm reading that correctly? Because it looks like it's exact opposite of what you just told us, that there's dips in 6th and 8th grade, and 7th grade there's increases, a lot of increases, which is, I think, what you just said the opposite a minute ago.
And you make a good point. And so we see percentage increases, but numbers actually drop. And it's because the cohort size of each from year to year, so it does change. And that impacts the total numbers. Where a number shift would be most obvious is if it was the same number of students who are low income every year and you could see a number change, right? So one of the things that I think is going to be very helpful in the future when this presentation comes to the board is instead of a numbers point of view to present to the board, a percentage change in ethnicity or subgroups over time might be more beneficial for the board's knowledge in terms of how we are closing gaps for students.
Thank you.
So in summary, we see that from 6th to 8th grade, the percentage of students, and by percentage of students, not number of students, doesn't change very much over time from 6th grade. The percentage of students in a cohort failing for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade fluctuates only about 1 or 2% through the middle years. The current 8th grade class has increased the percentage of level 4 students and decreased its percentage of level 2 students as they are transitioning now into 9th grade, and that's a very positive sign. And then our 7th graders experienced the greatest decline in core grades over the 3-year period. Moving on to attendance, I've provided this slide to just kind of remind you last year at the closure of this presentation, what was the work we were embarking on this year to address attendance. And and the board has received updates so far this year on community truancy boards, total absence monitoring and reporting. And I think it's just important to know that we'll be highlighting several of these actions in this presentation, but also in an upcoming presentation, a special meeting that the board has later this month on the State of the School Review. So just to be brief, we've shifted to our attendance monitoring to total absences. We've also went to monthly reporting or monitoring to our principals on their attendance reports for absences and tardies. And you can see on the screen a snapshot of the reports that we send out to the principals to do ongoing monitoring month to month as a total accumulation for the year. We've also implemented an attendance team, a district attendance team, who also was working to develop the other picture that you see, which is a snapshot of those attendance letters that go out to families to inform them about how their students' attendance is relative to the school and to the district. Those letters just went out over spring break, so you board members with students in the district, you may have received those over the break. And so, just in summary, what does our snapshot about student attendance tell us in our middle level students at the end of February? You may notice that there is a trend when you look at these attendance rates, and it does correlate strongly to the free and reduced lunch rates we see at the schools. And not to say that students with free and reduced lunch who are receiving free and reduced lunch could not attend school regularly. It's just that some of those barriers that students face are more prevalent in our students who receive free and reduced lunch. And that is the work of our schools to address those barriers and eliminate them so students can get to school more regularly. In summary, we see that when we combine all 5 middle schools, there's a 5.8% absence rate, cumulative absence rate so far this school year. And so last year I shared with the board that the high school readiness indicators only measured unexcused absences. And as such, the data did not provide a complete picture that could help schools determine holistically how many students were struggling with their attendance. So this year, based on board's feedback, it's like, what use is this particular slide or data to us? It's not telling the board how things are going. So you're going to see a recalculation of attendance and how we are also aligning that. It's the same calculations we're using with principals and schools to monitor our attendance data and get a fresher perspective on what really is going on at each of our middle school grade levels. So as you can see, attendance in 6th grade, we can see that, and I'll just define the categories at the top for you. Occasionally absent students have 0 to 5% absences through first semester, which is just right around 2 or less absences for first semester. Moderately absent students are somewhere between 2 and about, I think it was 8 point something, if you calculate it, absences. So between 2 and 8 absences in the first semester. And then chronically absent students are absent 10% or more of the time, which means 9 absences or more first semester. And so as you can see from the data in this particular slide, the breakdown is 57.5% of our students in 6th grade have occasionally absent students, meaning 2 or less absences first semester. 24% of our students in 6th grade are moderately absent, somewhere between 2 and 8 absences for first semester. And then chronically absent students had 9 or more absences for first semester, and that was 17.8% in 6th grade. When we look at this data in 7th grade, we can see a slight shift in the number of students changing in the chronically absent and moderately absent rate, but generally reflective in that mid-50s% in the students occasionally absent. And then in 8th grade, we see an increase in level in the chronically absent students and a slight decrease in moderately absent students. So what does this particular data tell us? It tells us that well over 50% of our students are only occasionally absent. Attendance is positive for them. They're not missing a lot of school. But we are seeing that 19.8% of all students grades 6 through 8, if you combine all 3 grade levels, are chronically absent, having 10 or more absences at this point in the semester. And that's really informed us about who we need to be targeting this year for our schools. Low-income students do have a higher chronic absenteeism, and that's because of the barriers that they face that other students may not have. And we also see that 7th grade has the highest percentage of absences. Ethnicity is less of a predictor of absenteeism than low-income students. And that for next year's high school readiness report, we will be updating the high school readiness indicator sheet that you see here to reflect the way that we are now working with absences. I'm going to kind of speed up just a little bit because I want to make sure I leave time. So in Washington State history, the graduation requirement, we can take a look here at the data for our 7th grade students. And so far this school year, the data you will see is a bit of a shift from last year, as more schools are providing sections second semester to catch students who transfer into their schools after the first 2 months of school, or who may have failed first semester. And in 2017, 83% of 7th grade students met this requirement first semester. And that is compared to this year, only 68% of students in 7th grade have met that requirement so far this semester. It is important to note that Eisenhower, Evergreen, and North, when you look at this data, have intentionally arranged their master schedules to provide more sections of Washington State history second semester this year, which is why you see fewer students, 32% of them have not yet met in 7th grade because they're in those classes right now. So just to give a caveat to the data there. When we look at 8th grade, our 8th grade students, we see that currently right now about 9% of our students have yet to meet the Washington State history requirement at all 5 schools. And when compared to this time last year, that's a 2.1% increase. What's important to know is that out of the 141 students who have not yet met, those students are in second semester classes. And when we look at the math that goes behind our prediction of our final rates, when we look at our level 1 students right now for Washington State history, if all students who are enrolled in a class second semester in 7th grade, if they were all to pass, we would end up with a 97% completion rate for 7th grade district-wide for Washington State history at the end of this year. When we look at 8th grade, if all the 8th grade students currently enrolled, that 9% were to pass, who are currently in a class, they will end up at a 95% completion rate moving on to high school. And 95% is our target. With the number of students who move in and out of Everett Public Schools, that is the target we look to seek with our transfer students. And so just to summarize, about 9% of our 8th graders are working on completing that Washington State history requirement before they move on to high school for next year. And we see a 15% elevation from the previous year in the number of 7th grade students. And as I described, that was intentionally scheduled to make sure that we capture as many 7th grade students as possible. Moving on, I'm going to just kind of go through each of the successes that we see here in our high school course enrollment. You can see here for Eisenhower's graph, just to kind of point out, the green star tells you that we have more students this year participating in high school level courses at Eisenhower Middle School than last year. And specifically, we see an increase from 53% last year to 53.4% this year in a high school level course. Its most prevalent trend upward is participation in advanced science in 8th grade. For Evergreen, we see an increase in their participation in high school level courses, and it was a huge increase from 44% last year of students participating in a high school level course to 51.8% this year, and that's a big jump in 1 year. So great work going on there, and we see a very positive upward trend in advanced math, high school level math, and then English. For Gateway Middle School, we don't see much of not even a % change in the number of students participating this year. We've seen a slight increase in Spanish at Gateway, but we're seeing a downward trend in math, advanced high school math participation at Gateway. And as we look at Heatherwood has had an increase in its high school participation, slight increases in English and math this last year. Overall, we see a 2.6% increase of student participation at Heatherwood, with a total of 72.6% of its students taking a high school level course. And finally, looking at North Middle School, North Middle School had a great increase in its participation in high school level courses. They shifted from 40% participation last year to 47.9% this year. And that's a huge jump in their rigorous course participation. And in summary, what we see district-wide is a 2.4% increase in student participation in high school credit-bearing courses in our middle schools this year. Last year, we received feedback from the board about the participation gap and how that was calculated. So taking the feedback from the board, I present to you a more accurate calculation of the participation gap of our subgroups in high school credit-bearing courses in 8th grade.
Is it more accurate or is it more granular?
More granular, I think, would be more accurate.
Wasn't inaccurate last time.
Yeah. So to briefly summarize, we see that of our students, we currently have a 15.3% participation gap between our Asian and white students when compared to our participation for all non-white and Asian students. So this is data that we can continue to report to the board on our progress to close that gap over time in our middle school, high school level courses. When we look at advanced classes in 8th grade, just to quickly summarize, we see, and this is just a recording of the number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, okay, that students earned at each of the schools. And you can see that in each area, we're seeing great progress. We're seeing more A's being earned, more B's being earned, less C's being earned, less D's being earned, and just about the same number of F's as the previous year. These are all indicators of more students, like we said, taking advanced courses, but also being successful in them. When we look at this by ethnicity, we see that our total number of students who are participating from year to year is increasing. But we see a reduction in the percentage of C's, D's, and F's in all the subgroups this year, first semester, when compared with last year's results, with an increase in the percentage of A's earned in each subgroup. So that's a great celebration that all of our subgroups listed here are getting higher and higher levels of performance in our advanced classes. And this is data we can use to monitor the closing of gap in our schools. So in summary, we see progress is being made for all students to access and perform in more rigorous courses. We see an upward trend in the participation in Spanish and high school math across the middle schools holistically. We also see that only 19 F's were issued in an advanced course out of all the grades that were issued, and that's 1,242 grades, only 19 of them were F's. And that's showing that students are passing that challenging coursework. And we see only 3.4% of grades issued in an advanced class first semester were D's, and that's down from 5% last year. So we're getting more and more kids to earn C and above in those advanced courses, and that's a real positive trend. Looking ahead, so as we look ahead to this summer and our student supports for high school readiness, we have some great work ahead of us. Work is already underway for our EL and math middle summer school programs that will be again housed at Evergreen Middle School and Heatherwood Middle School this year. We've added a course for incoming sixth graders to participate in our middle school, summer school options. We didn't have our fifth graders transitioning to sixth grade. They weren't able to participate last year. This year we are. And we think that's going to really help our students to get a leg up and advance themselves into advanced pathways. But also, we continue to provide more access and support to kids who are struggling to get their math skills up, because we know those math skills are so important to reduce remediation rates at the high school level. And we're also excited to have all of our eighth graders who are leaving middle school and going to high school are eligible to participate in those STEM courses that we're providing at Cascade High School Summer School through WANIC. So that advertisement is going out to eighth grade CTE courses, so they are aware that they can sign up for a tech class through WANIC Summer School for no cost. A lot of our eighth graders might not know that they're eligible for that as soon as they exit eighth grade. We continue to focus our improvement on attendance. To be honest, the legislation, as you see, continues to change how we record and report attendance. That at the procedural level is kind of a challenge. But we continue on our attendance team to positively work on those changes and to impact student attendance by getting kids to school and removing those barriers. So we will keep the board informed of any policy and procedural changes through Friday report or here in the board meetings based on those legislative changes and OSBI reporting requirements. We will need to revise, as I stated, our high school readiness indicator to reflect total absences for next year and update this particular document for our families. We'll also need to do updated pieces about percentage of students at the D or F level on core grades as opposed to raw numbers when we present to the board next year. That's just not providing a useful enough view, I think, to inform the board of our progress. And finally, we need to continue to identify and counsel and register underrepresented students into advanced courses. You saw some great successes about how more kids are participating in advanced and high school credit-bearing courses. That's very encouraging, but that focus on equity that I started the presentation with and is a core value of the board and the school district, that is directly embedded into that work, that each student has that opportunity to get advanced classes and have those opportunities. But what that does mean is that we need to develop tier two supports, academic supports for students in advanced and high school credit-bearing classes that aren't necessarily fully in place this school year. So we'll continue to work with our middle schools to support those kids as they take advanced options. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. It's a lot of information, great information. Directors, student representatives, do you have any questions for Mr. Fleckenstein? Go ahead, Rubik.
Yeah, I have two questions about the attendance. So first, so the letters that we got in the mail last week about total absences, was that just for high schoolers or was that also sent to the middle school students?
That's district-wide.
District-wide, okay.
All grade levels.
Okay. And also, in calculating the new metric for total absences, is that just the parent excused absence plus the unexcused, or is that also including things like field trips and other school-related absences?
You make a good point. There are some school excused absences that are excluded from the calculation, but it primarily is all absences that are not, under OSPI's guidelines, can be counted as excused and not count against you. So we have some information that went on each school's attendance website and then can also be accessed through the district website on the attendance letters and how that total absence rate is calculated, if you want to check that out after the board meeting. And I can point that out to you, Druvik. Yeah.
And how often do we send those out? Because I think I've received 2 already this year.
We've done 2 so far this year.
It's 2 a year? Is that what's required of the procedure or the OSPI?
The attendance letters are not a requirement. It's something that we do here in Everett to help create partnership and then knowledge for parents about their absences relative to other students and their school as a whole, so they can make some adjustments, if possible, to get their student to school more often. Small adjustments make a big difference in absenteeism.
Does that go to every parent or every student parent or just students that have a problem?
It goes to every student.
Okay. I just didn't see it, so.
Yep.
And there are multiple versions of the letter depending on where you.
And some levels are celebrations. That is honoring students with great attendance. And so it's not just for those students who are struggling, it's also to celebrate those kids who are getting to school. Time.
What does that cost?
Yes.
What's the cost? Yeah.
Lots of money.
Do you combine them for families so that you don't mail them? Like if you have 4 kids in the district, do you send out 4 letters or you combine them all at one time? That's expensive.
Right?
Would you like the cost
I
budget?
would put it Friday report.
Okay.
I'm just going to continue because my questions are on this same line, if that's okay. What is the purpose of the letter, and what is the objective, and how do we measure that objective of those letters?
Well, and Dr. Stewart, you can always join. But the purpose of the letter is to create an awareness of our families on their students' attendance and how it may be impacting their academic progress. We know from research that students who are chronically absent from school have negative academic impacts in terms of their overall performance and achievement. And so creating an awareness for parents is first and foremost the purpose of the letters. How is my child doing? Because it can be that days add up and they're not really aware of just how many days are adding up. And then they get to the end of the semester and they're wondering why their student isn't performing where they expect them to be. And so this has created a dialogue, an awareness for parents, where they can then contact the school and reach out to them and say, hey, I'm seeing this maybe total up a little bit above what I thought it was, and I've noticed that maybe their grades aren't where I need them to be, and then they can seek that partnership with the school to either remove some barriers or to get some assistance with check-ins at school on their attendance. For students who are coming to school regularly, we want to celebrate their effort and let their parents know that we recognize that them coming to school and not missing school is something to celebrate at home, and that we value in the district.
Okay. And then I guess my only other question, so, you hear occasionally, we are putting such an emphasis on attendance, and it's important for definitely a subset of our students, and creating that awareness. But when I hear things like kids are so stressed because they're not going to get their whatever award and they're sick, that, because they can't come to school, I'm wondering if, we're over, you don't want to back off on the things that are important, but it calls into question about the kids that do have good grades and do attend mostly regularly, if we're doing a district-wide overemphasis. I hate to say overemphasis because that's not exactly what I mean.
And I think that's great perspective and feedback to share with us. Our saucers are part of that. You're going to learn a lot more about attendance and what we're doing around attendance and how it's measured and calculated than what we're using it to measure progress on or take action on in your special board meeting on April 27th. As a part of the State of the School Review presentation, you're going to have a more in-depth rotation on attendance in that particular board meeting.
Okay.
So I've just tried to give you a little bit of a taste to get you excited for that meeting.
Okay, I'm excited.
But our attendance team, is very much working on the analysis that you're asking for and how we can always improve our communication with families around attendance.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Other directors, what are your questions?
I have a couple of great presentation. I really liked it, and it's very detailed, and I like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'd like to see those kind of. On slide 23, when we mention these are by number of students, and you said, well, perhaps we may want to go with percentage instead of numbers. Wait, yes. When the subgroups are so small, i.e. you get to some subgroups that are less than 5 or 3, how will that skew what you're actually receiving? Because then it'll be down to...
Oh, it skews it very much so.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I think as I've provided in some of the other slides in this presentation, and I'll use this as an example, I provided the number of students in addition to its percentage. And I think that's some of the revision that going through this a second year with the board, I think I can provide that particular view here. That's a little more helpful to monitor our students at the level 1 performance in our subgroups.
And
So I look forward to those revisions for next year.
Yes, and on slide 47, if you would, please. One next question, I was just wondering, 47. Excuse me. One more, 47.
Sorry.
Okay, for this particular one, when we talk about math, summer school math, there is no cost for our students, I take it?
In middle school, there is not.
And
To the family.
WA,
To the family.
to the family. That's what I meant. Thank you very much. WANIC, can you give me those abbreviations again, what they mean?
So that's the skills center that we have through Lake Washington. And that's, I can't remember exactly what each one stands for. I apologize.
I'll give it to you.
And there is no cost to the student or the family for taking these classes.
That's correct. No cost.
And we advertise to all students. It's not only a select students because of their grades that they can attend either program.
No, our advertisement is particularly at the high school level. Those have been out and out of the things. At the middle school transition meetings that we had at the end of March, those brochures were also available. Specifically, CTE classes are getting that information to do signups. The WANIC summer school classes are actually signed up on the WANIC website. And we have a link from our high school.
Washington Network for Innovative Careers.
Thank you. And so we have a direct link to their website from our summer school site to then sign up. Those registrations, I believe, are this week at the end of the week, where students, it opens up and it's first come, first serve.
It's first come, first serve.
Yep.
And do we have a limited number of seats available?
We only have a limited number of seats based on the number of courses that we have, yeah. So,
Do we
but
provide
if all of Everett Public Schools students were to be the first to sign up, they get in.
Yep, they're here.
They're here, okay,
They're in our schools.
okay,
These are summer courses that we offer here through the Skill Center.
okay. And also, will transportation be provided during summer school for our families?
Yes, we do. We have transportation during summer school.
Thank you.
Questions too, but they're fast, I hope. They're more statements and questions. First, and they're in order of your presentation. As a parent who did one of those 8th grade things, that's by far the most anxiety decreasing thing for a parent.
Okay.
So I appreciate it. One of the two things at NSBA that I didn't mention before, but one district with the non-Beyond and high school and beyond plan, and we might not have the staff to do this, but it was a thought, because I've questioned kids saying, I want to be a teacher when they're 7th grade, and then they make this plan. But what this district does is 2 times a year, they ask the kids, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And so every kid is asked the same question, and then every 6 months, they create a plan for what classes you need to get to that, what classes you need to get to that. And they think their outcomes are really that they want students to be more strategic thinkers about, as my daughter's gone from doctor to lawyer to artist to history teacher, what does that look like? So it's just sort of interesting how we do it and just where they are. Next thing, North Middle School with I know we work hard on the college readiness applications, but for our highest poverty school, I know that college is not an option for each kid, but once they get to high school, it sure is a shame that those kids might not have that funding source because of a lack of an application. And I applaud the efforts that have been done and just wonder about opportunities so that we can get those numbers up because of who that population is. And that my next thing is we're planning the budget for next year. We're going to get the SASA reports. This DF even a concern for Cs, for these kids who are taking these classes in middle school. 10% of the kids taking these advanced classes got an F, more than one F. What are the supports really for those kids as they take harder classes, that we continue to lift them up so that they don't have a decrease, especially as parents and students and counselors are thinking about moving those grades up. A C might not be a choice for certain college-bound students, and just a question for support as we're planning the budget. And then the last thing, I don't know if we do this, so this is my question. The first day we were at SBA, there was a Magna Award, which is their big celebration for what school districts are doing phenomenal work based on the size of the district. And there's a district that has a large immigrant population, mostly refugees, but they have classes for their parents in what school is here in their district. So like in the US or our district, about what attendance looks like, what grades are, how to do these processes, how to get things all in their native tongue. So ELA is offered and things, and wondering if that happens here for the parents, or if that might be an opportunity that it would even be possible here or reasonable here.
I don't have a direct answer for your question, but it's something that I can research and have.
Because it just seemed like a good thing, because I think that the letters, but how do we engage parents and what attendance means to the grades, especially for immigrants? And we have heard tell of families that go away back to their homeland for 2 or 3 weeks because of cost. And so how do we educate them on what U.S. school is, what state requirements are? I see an opportunity.
Great.
But great information. Thank you.
Thank you.
I took a long time.
Student Representative Pollack, any questions, comments? Director Andrews.
A lot of it's been covered, but excellent presentation, just a wealth of data. And we're obviously giving our students a lot of opportunities to experience high school level classes in middle school. I guess my concern is, and this is probably a separate study session, but what are we doing for the level 1 students? And I think somehow in the back of my mind, I keep hearing parents, when I visited Sequoia, saying, if we could only have a middle school for, like an alternative middle school for those kids who are not quite making it in middle school. So I think that's my only comment.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to share that at 4:56, I got a peach jar flyer on Wannock Summer Skills Academy. Register. And at the bottom, you have the option to learn more or sign up now. So
Great.
it was pretty timely. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome. And that was not strategically planted in any way by myself.
Oh, come on. Okay, at this point, we will be taking a 15-minute break, which reconvenes us at 6:33. Thank you.
might be able to.
Wait, well,
Thank you. We're going to get started again. We have quite a few items for information and discussion this evening, and Mr. Beckley and his team are kicking us off with student device selection.
So good evening, and we are excited to be with you again this evening. Almost exactly a year ago to the day, we were in front of you having a device selection presentation, and so we are excited to be with you again today to do the same, where we talk about the device we want to select for Jackson High School and Cascade High School for their one-to-one rollout beginning next school year. So I want to start by acknowledging and thanking the community for supporting the capital levy and the capital bond that has funded this initiative. The infrastructure, the device selection, all of that was community supported, and we are so fortunate to be able to talk to you today about our selection and having the funds to support this. And we want to make sure to publicly thank, as every chance we get, our community for supporting that. I also, our thanks to the board for their vision and the leadership team for their vision in this one-to-one initiative. It's just very exciting. And so we're excited to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the next steps for Jackson and Cascade. And having had the experience at Everett and Sequoia and learning a lot with those two high schools, and you'll hear from us today, the feedback from the students and the staff about their experience is really going to help inform our next steps with Jackson and Cascade. We did not necessarily plan on being here a year after being here for the selection. So I want to start by saying that our goal when we did the process selection for Everett and Sequoia, because we engaged Jackson and Cascade students and parents in our selection process before. Everett High School and Sequoia in the process of selection involved all of our high schools. And the idea was to have every student with the same device in their first year of rollout. And then, as technology changes, we knew that there would be an updated device from Toshiba, but the form factor, the computer changed so much from what Everett and Sequoia had that we felt like, in consultation with Cabinet, that we should do another review process. So we're here today to kind of share that process and in a compressed timeline, but we didn't necessarily plan on doing the whole thing again, that all the students would have the same device, but that just was not a possibility. So joining me tonight in the presentation is the leadership team that I have the fortune of working with. We have Ken Toyne, who's the director of our network services team, and Joanne Budewig, our director of our learning management services team, and Scott Jenkins, who leads the customer and technology services team. Also joining us, as he was with us last year too, is Scott Armitage. Scott is our project manager who leads the one-to-one project work for our district. Our objectives tonight are to essentially review the selection process with you, share the input and feedback that we received, provide you with the device selection information, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions. These are the strategic plan goals specific to the device and the outreach and communication as part of the strategic plan. I just like to keep the integrated technology plan in front of the board. This is a status update of the technology plan. It's the foundation of our work. it continues to be and the implementation of it. We'll be back in front of you in June to give you sort of a recap of our second year of the implementation of the technology plan. Tonight is specific to sharing about the student device selection. So I'll turn it over to Joanne to talk a little bit about the process.
So we built off of last year's work. So we had feedback on what was the most important feature sets and that from our students last year. We, as a jumping off place, we went back to Microsoft and Intel and we asked them, we know digital linking is our priority. What is our current technology and what is the best and strongest processors out there for us to use? They gave us 5 devices that fit within our parameters from 3 different manufacturers to test, to look at, to review. We looked at all the 16, 17. We had a lot of instructional leadership input at that time. We had done parent events, been to the PTSA. We had student feedback. But what we did is we went back round that loop with the new devices and that list. So the LMS team used the devices to make sure the battery life was accurate. Those types of functionalities that were advertised were actually working in the device. We went to our Technology Advisory Council, which was incredibly helpful. Our community members had a lot of advice about even the manufacturers to think about the industry standards and their market share in that. So that was a really healthy conversation. We went back to the high schools. On February 23rd, we went to Cascade and to Jackson and to Everett High. So we went back to Everett High to ask them, what were the feature sets that you found most useful, that you found most valuable in your learning? And then on a different date, we went to Sequoia and did the same thing. And their input was amazing. They told us a lot about our process and also the computer itself. They talked about things like the pen and what worked best for them. And then we also, we had the devices in use at the Technology Summit. We went to parent open houses. We were at Cascade on March 1st. We were actually almost selling Tolo tickets because we were near the sign. And then on March 20th, we were out at Jackson High School for their 8th grade parent night. And again, having them look at the devices. And then we approached Cabinet and came to our selection, which I'll hand off to Ken Toyne.
Thanks, Joanne. So given the feedback we got and the conclusion of that the process, we landed on the Lenovo ThinkPad device. When we began this, when we learned that the original device, the Toshiba, wasn't going to be available, we were concerned about our ability to find a good alternative. But we're reasonably confident that we have found a good alternative. This device has the nice large screen. It has a good number of ports that we liked with the original device. By good number, it means it's got the USBs, the HDMIs, pretty much what you'd need for the typical use in a classroom for ports. It's a robust device. We'll talk about that here in a second, but you'll note that it's a fairly slim package. We were concerned about some of its capability to handle some of the abuse in schools. I'll talk about that in a second. We're pretty impressed with how they've addressed that. So some of the highlights of this device are, this was the only one that was sent to us from the various manufacturers that had the latest generation of the Intel CPU, the 8th generation. It brings some very nice performance upgrades to the device. In addition to that, it's got the solid-state drive. It's a 256 gig drive. We could go larger, but we're going to encourage our students to use their cloud storage, which is much more flexible in terms of its use and utilization. One thing we liked about the original device was it had both a world-facing camera and a face-facing camera. This particular device does have both cameras. The world-facing camera is right here above the keyboard, which is a unique location, so a student can look at the screen and move the camera around that way. It also has the face-viewing camera here for WebEx meetings or any kind of conferencing solutions. Obviously, we looked for a robust keyboard, spill-resistant. You'll note that it's a very good keyboard. It has a very tactile feeling. Lenovo comes from the IBM heritage, and IBM keyboards are known to be very good, very solid keyboards. We've got a 12-hour battery life in this unit. It's a 6-cell battery life. We're thinking that should suffice as long as it keeps charging or charged. The charger itself is compact and easy to tote around. We've got the 4-year warranty out of this, which was very exciting. This by default came with 3-year warranties from the factory. Typically, they come with 1. That tells us a little bit about their confidence in its ability to run over time. One of the really nice features about this, and some of the feedback we got from the other schools, the original schools, was they had difficulty keeping track of the pen. It's like any pen or pencil, they kind of lose it. The highlight of this unit is it actually has a built-in garage, we call it, for a pen. It's an active pen. It seems to be working identically to the pen that the original device has, again with the added feature of a place to actually put it and not using it. We call it an emergency pen. It was a much smaller stylus. It wasn't a charged or active pen. It was more like a traditional stylus, which is like you use in your finger. The benefit of this is it actually does hold a charge. It charges when it's in the garage, and it provides that active feedback that we get with true inking technology. Finally, the trackpad's really good. We're really pleased, again, with the ports, so we don't have to deal with the dongles that we want to avoid. I know we had some chat about dongles last time. No more dongles with this as well, so we're happy about that. The trackpad is robust, right and left clicks built in. And finally, again, to be clear, it's a convertible unit, so they can use it as a tablet as well as a traditional laptop. From a robustness perspective, we were gratified to see that this particular device really went through a significant certification. This meets military specs certification for use in the wild. Some of the tests that went through was, there's sand, they had sand tests, it had drop and they call it shock tests, mechanical shock tests. They actually have a particular test for fungus, which we thought was helpful. It does meet a slightly higher standard than the original device we've got. We're feeling pretty good about its ability to survive a 4-year cycle in the classroom. And then again, based on some feedback from the original schools, we're providing a case with slightly more, rugged ability. There's more padding in this thing. The corners are better protected. We're feeling that given the military spec and this added case, we should be in pretty good shape as students use it for their 4-year career. Thank you.
So we're excited about our selection, the process that we went through to come up with our selection for the Lenovo, and wanted to provide that information to you this evening and share the details of the device and the process we use to go through that. But we also wanted to give you some time to ask us any questions you might have that you didn't already ask, and perhaps there are more that come to mind, but we're excited about getting this order started and get these devices arriving so we can start getting it ready for deployment.
I'm curious what the students, their number 1 or 2 feedback was in terms of what they liked or didn't like about the current device.
I'll let Joanne share that since she was at the schools with the team.
Actually, and I do not like, it was the tracking of the pen was actually one of the more common things. The device itself, Scott, you were at the feedback sessions, they were happy with it. They were pleased to have. Some wrote a lot. Some were still using it more like a traditional laptop. They had more things to say about, having more filter gone and, like the common, and their more personal use of the device. But as far as for school and that, they were very supportive, and anything they had was more improvement of giving the students more information, having more information on websites, how could they share across. So they really generated a lot of ways to improve people's understanding of how to use the device deeper and richer. So it wasn't a complaint about this device as much as it was how do we leverage it more.
And I think Ken had mentioned too, probably the one thing they said was it's hard keeping track of the pen being separate. And so with the pen having that convertible garage, it made it uniquely easy to store the pen as you carried it around. And we asked them about that, and they said that would have been a great idea.
Yeah.
So our new students that come into Everett and Sequoia for the following years will probably get the ThinkPad, correct?
The students at Everett and Sequoia will continue to use the Toshiba. When we purchased the Toshiba,
New students.
You talking about new students like next year?
New students, yeah. I know the 12th graders will probably leave their proteges there, and they will be given to the next class that's
Correct.
coming in. But any newer students, because you just have 2 years, you just have enough for the students that are there?
Well, we did build in the purchase some extra to have on for this very reason, that,
Okay.
we built in the idea that some might be lost or need to be replaced. So we had made enough in
You
our
have a
original.
buffer.
Yeah, to have a buffer. So
So-
we would have inventory for.
Or every school will have the same,
Yep.
same,
So Everett and Sequoia students will continue to have the
Have the
Toshiba.
Toshiba.
Jackson and Cascade will
who
have the
have the
Lenovo.
ThinkPad?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. That's my question.
For the next several years.
For the next several
Yeah.
years.
And then eventually we'll move into, down the road. But the plan is to do the same purchase for Cascade and Jackson, to build in enough extra in that original purchase so that we could maintain the same device at each school. Mhm.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
The budget and the price of these, I don't see anything in the background, but budget neutral? Are they about the same pricing as we planned, or what is the cost? Is there a cost area?
They are about the same cost as the Toshiba and the Lenovo. Ended up being pretty much the same within our price point and within budget, definitely, yeah. And that was actually one of when we got information from the manufacturers, we were clear about this is our price point, we can't go beyond that. So, and they were good, which needed to include the extended warranty.
This may be a dumb question,
No,
but
there are no.
are manufacturers really focusing on education to develop devices that are specific for education? Or could I walk into Costco and buy one of these because they're just available?
Maybe I'll have Ken chime in. He spent a lot of time talking directly with the manufacturers. I know that one of the reasons the Toshiba that we bought for Everett and Sequoia, their form factor changed so much because it became really thin with very few ports. And it was partly because they were catering more to the home market and the business market than they were schools. So I don't know what you found with.
Well, with Lenovo here, it's a business class device. So it's built more for business than it is for schools. But it does suffice quite nicely for what we're using it for in the schools. When talking to the manufacturers about providing devices for specifically for schools, HP, for example, has a device that is kind of a clamshell-looking thing. It's got a hardened case, but it's a small screen, very low-performing CPU. They're looking for a certain price point that the school districts are looking for compared to Chromebooks. I can tell you that the manufacturers, from a school device perspective, are focusing on Chromebooks, and there's a lot of exciting, developments in the Chromebook arena for schools. When we start looking at Windows 10 devices, we're looking more for a business class unit that can handle the type of use that we're using in schools.
I just got a new PC at work, and it's amazing. I mean, my old one was this big, and this one is this big, but it has a whole new operating system and all that kind of thing. So I'm learning a lot, and so I'm wondering, the professional development that's happened so far, will this new device affect that? Like, will the instructors need to learn things that are specific to this device?
Well,
the
uniqueness, the specific functionality of the device, we will work with the teachers. Joanne and her team actually has professional development that they'll put together for Jackson and Cascade on knowing how they can work with students on where the power button is and where the different features are. But in terms of the operation of the system and the functionality of the computer and what it does and the learning, the professional development we've been doing with Jeff Utek and his team, all of that, it applies to no matter what the form factor is that they're using. But there will be some training of the teachers at Cascade and Jackson, just like we did at Sequoia and Everett High School on this is how the computer operates.
Right. Yeah.
But some of it is a crossover. Applies no matter what the form factor is.
Such a changing field. I mean, you know, it's really, I suppose in so many ways, it's more the norm to have to change devices or look at something different than to be able to stick with one for 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
What type of feedback are you getting from parents or students, parents and students, about the opportunity of using hotspots?
Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of appreciation at our Everett and Sequoia families, and all 300 of our hotspots are in use and deployed, and there's demand for more. So we sort of reached our allotment, and so now we actually just recently have been communicating with Everett and Sequoia to track usage, to go back to students that maybe had a hotspot that didn't maybe fully utilize it. Could we redeploy that to another student who's in need? So that has been fully utilized at both schools and really appreciated. And we can track the usage of how much it's being used, so we can really see the demand and the use of those at-home internet devices.
Right.
So we're looking forward to tracking the same at Cascade and Jackson next year. So we'll get another allotment for those schools.
Well, the allotment, you know, you never know based on the demographics at each of the schools where the need is. But at Jackson and Cascade, do you anticipate the allotment will be the same or different based on the free and reduced price at each of the schools?
Maybe Scott Armitage could come up and answer that question. I'm so excited to get Scott Armitage in front of you.
So we've already submitted numbers to Sprint for next year. So the allotment looks a little bit different. And Sprint helped us with a formula where you kind of apply your free and reduced lunch percentage to how many devices you're going to need. And it's a formula they've worked out with districts across the country, and it worked out fairly accurately for Sequoia and Everett. So we just followed that and submitted an order. I off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many devices, but we think that it'll be fairly close.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate
just
that.
To add on usage, I was pretty happy. We've got 91.6% of the devices we've handed out are seeing some usage. So,
good.
So it's a really high percentage.
And these devices allow for the families or people in the general area that are around that hotspot to be able to use their cell phone or other devices on the internet?
Yeah, as long as the student gives them the password that's on the back of the device. 'Cause they're
The
still
roles are
password protected,
reversed, yeah. Thank you.
You know, where
Yeah.
you may have students doing a project together, and so they're at that individual's home, so they may need access, you know, on their device.
Yeah,
So.
and the password's right on the back of the device, so that they can all access it and use it, and it'll support up to 15 people simultaneously using it.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're going to move on at this point then. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very
sharing the
much.
information,
We'll
and
see you
thanks for
again in
the
a couple
team for
months.
doing the legwork and getting us another device ready to deploy. Okay, we are moving on to an online high school update. I think Dr. Joy Stewart's going to kick us off, and then she has a few folks from Sequoia here to
Yes,
and our
so-
online high school program.
Good evening and welcome back from your national conference. What good role models you are for all of us for adult learning and ongoing learning, so we're glad you're back. So anyway, in a lot of our board presentations, you hear us use the word personalization, and then you also hear us use the word equity. In fact, I was telling tonight, Larry used it several times, the word equity. And we take every opportunity in professional development or whenever we're in front of groups to remind people in this district when we talk about equity, it's first of all getting to know each student so that you can remove any barrier for that child or student so he or she can access tools, opportunities, learning experiences, and then reach their goals and aspirations. And so that can be a kindergarten student, or that can be a middle school student or a high school student. So tonight, what you're going to hear is about a tool. And Kelly Shepard and Kevin Corbin, who lead this work, are going to talk to you about how many of our students throughout the district are accessing this tool. So when you think of equity, I want you to think about how this tool benefits so many of our students who need personalization. So with that, I'd like to invite Kelly Shepard and Mr. Corbin to Does he want to take the chair? Or
I think we're going to tag team
You're
it.
gonna tag team it,
We
okay.
are collaborative and work together and finish each other's sentences, right? I'm going to have my sport team right next to me, Brian. You know. So thank you for having us here tonight. We appreciate the opportunity, I think, to share. I've been at Sequoia Online High School in Port Gardner for 7 years, and it's the first time we've had an opportunity to present very specifically about online high school to the board. So we really appreciate this opportunity to share some of the great work happening in that subset of our program. Tonight, our goals are to review both a little bit of the history and the purpose of Everett Public Schools Online High School, talk about our unique components of one of the state's oldest and most successful virtual learning programs. We're 17 years old, so think about technology 17 years ago and how revolutionary Everett Public Schools was at the time they launched Online High School. Summarize some of our key historical growth metrics and talk about our student success rates. And importantly, demonstrate the online high school impact on helping our students being college, career, and future ready, and then celebrate some success stories. And you'll see the links that we make to the strategic plan through our process, lots of connections, and I know you're all very familiar with it. I'm not going to read this to you, but I think what's important to see is online high school really fits into multiple different modes and models within our strategic plan and why it's such an important part of our district work.
Like Kelly said, we've been at this for a long time. So just kind of some history. Back in 2000, when we did some research, we found that over 350 students were leaving the Everett Public Schools and going to other online programs. Problem was that they were failing, and then they were coming back to Everett, credit deficit, and more resources were needed to be able to remediate them and help them graduate, because most students failed when they went somewhere else. So in 2002, with the help of the district board and Sally Lancaster and Pat Jones was one of our first programmers that helped get out this all going. We launched in 2002, and the goal was simply to provide alternative learning experiences for Everett students, to keep our Everett students in Everett, and to make sure that students could maintain a trajectory to graduation. And importantly, just provide another way, another menu option, if you will, for students to be able to stay in Everett.
Yes, that is Dr. Sally Lancaster. We went to the archives.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. Small distraction there.
Sorry,
Yeah. It was kind of the Wild West back then, because nothing was regulated. And it wasn't until 2009 that the state stepped in and defined what online learning is or was going to be and how the things were going to be directed. And since that time, we've been accredited, and we are also NCAA eligible. The Eligibility Center at the NCAA has certified us. So our courses are eligible for students who want to pursue academics and athletics at Division I schools. As of October 6th.
It is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. Yeah. Thank you. As of October 16, 2016, there's 134 programs, which when we started way back in 2002, there was only 4. And so we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of change over those years. You can read the data points here, but just know that now that there's 76 school districts that offer at least one online program. The unique components of the Everett Public Schools. I think this is a really important thing to focus on. The decision was made a long time ago that we were going to focus on Everett students in the Everett School District. We weren't going to go outside. We don't sell our curriculum to anybody else. We dabbled in that a little bit with some other school districts like Central Kitsap and Spokane a little bit. We did a lot of training. We brought people in. We did all kinds of things as we were all kind of learning to work together to decide how online learning worked. But we provide classes, online opportunities, learning opportunities for Everett students only. We communicate directly with parents, we communicate directly with counselors, and we work really closely with them. We integrate our weekly progress report grades into our own reporting system in LMS so that parents can look online and see what their students' grades are, which is something that they can't do with any other kind of online program. And importantly, we create flexible learning opportunities for students. We survey them and ask them, why are you taking online high school courses? And overwhelmingly, it's flexible options so that they can take other classes during their school day and get requirements out of the way at another part of their day. These are students mostly that are taking online courses as part of their 6-period schedule. The biggest and most we're really successful, and Kelly will talk about that with data. And we have a couple of our teachers here, Mark Ryder, math teacher, and Laura White, our English teacher. But seriously, none of this would be possible. This longevity that we've had and the success wouldn't be possible without the team and the team approach that we have. We have wonderful administrators, again, starting with Sally and now Kelly, counselors that have integrated their work with our online students, and our registrar, Judy, and then our teachers. 25 years average in the education world, 13 years average in e-learning. They're really gifted, amazing teachers. All of them have masters, and 60% of them are certified specifically through an online certification program to be online teachers. They're amazing people that are able to work with students through the wires, through the distance, to be able to help them learn. They meet with them in person. Our teachers go to the school and will meet face-to-face with students and parents if they want to. Students can drop into Sequoia High School, where all our teachers are at one time. And so they're amazing people. Laura teaches 12, 14 classes. Mark has huge numbers of students, and they're able to work and individualize and personalize all the learning opportunities for those students. I'll let Kelly talk about growth metrics.
So now that Kevin shared a little about the history, and I would reiterate the importance of the team and the collaboration that happens with that team and using our Everett Public Schools teachers, which is unique to our program compared to others. So we wanted to share a little bit of the historical enrollment numbers and a little bit of maybe the why behind it. You'll see on this chart, the red represents fall enrollment in courses, the green is spring, and the yellow is summer. So our summer school program, while run under Larry Fleckenstein's leadership, uses the online high school as a big component of that program. You'll notice a real common trend. First semester, there's less students enrolled in online high school classes. Second semester, it grows, and you'll see the summer enrollment ebbs and flows based on meeting needs. But you'll also notice an overall decline in online high school enrollment. And one of the things as we drill into the data that is different from even when I used to look at the data 6 and 7 years ago, we used to have way more students taking out of sequence courses. And what that means is a student was unsuccessful in the class first semester in whatever school they were at, and then they were enrolling in first semester English through online high school as a credit, reading to retake the whole class. Well, as our staffs at our schools have all worked to increase the success of students, we have very few. So it's a celebration that our numbers are down, because students are taking the vast majority of these classes reflect schedule flexibility and or making room in their schedule to take more advanced placement courses or music courses or whatever else is in that piece. So while our numbers have gone down, as you pull into what the data changes, it's really a success. You'll also notice there's a trend about enrollment. This is our current enrollment. Again, red is first semester and green is spring. You'll see a very stratified enrollment based on school. Jackson High School has the largest enrollment, Cascade is second, and Everett is trailing behind. And just to see this isn't an anomaly this year, you can see here's 5-year, 6-year trend data to say consistently Jackson has had more enrollment, and we've tried to drill into what happens. We think some of that is access to technology in the process, and we believe our one-to-one initiative will start to be able to see that access opened up more. Some of it is Running Start enrollments. We have a high percentage of our students enrolled in Running Start concurrently with online high school, and there's a greater enrollment of Running Start. So there's lots of enrollment pieces, but it really is looking at how we find that match of students with online learning, which I will tell you for me, while I may be the administrator of online learning, it's not my strength class to learn online. I have to work really hard. Also wanted to look at what classes are kids taking in online high school, and you'll see the number one class taken in online high school is PE. And I know some of you who maybe haven't done online learning, you're like, how does that happen? Well, there's 2 reasons I think that it is. Number one is the number one reason students fail PE class in our schools is because they're not suiting up. And what does taking a class through online high school alleviate? You get to suit up at your time that you want and do your workout. Through those PE classes, through Diversify, they create a fitness plan, and then they work their personalized fitness plan for success. It's really about that healthy long-term living. So that's I think one of the pieces that we see in meeting that need. And then you'll see our social studies are our next largest. And you'll notice things that are not necessarily unexpected. You see our science classes and our math classes at the lower end. That's a challenging environment sometimes for our students to learn in, but they can be very successful. This is broken down by numbers in case you want to see. Social studies is the highest frequency course at Cascade and Everett, where it's PE. In both kind of fall and spring, it follows a similar trend. So it's meeting that needs. And then this is if you want to see it visually, like different courses. Again, you'll see PE is really a high value one, and you'll see some discrepancies, and it's really helping meet some of the needs of our students. And then a question that came up is how many students are how many students do you have enrolled, which is always a hard question for us to answer because we think about it as the class or the course level. So we have 540 students this year that have enrolled in one online high school class. So the rest of their student day is either in person at one of our 4 high schools or Running Start or Snow Isle or whatever that looks like. And then you'll see 81 are in 2 classes. And then as we get down to 3 and 4, it's a very small amount. And I will often say to people, our wheelhouse is not a full-time online student. We currently have 1 full-time online student. It is just a really challenging environment for students to really at the age, I love Hunter's nodding, to be full-time online is a challenge. And students really, there's great interaction with teachers, but that face-to-face accountability that comes when you have to report to a place really works developmentally with our youth's brains that are still developing. Historical growth metrics, you'll also see that as looking at the class that a student's in, very few freshmen take it, more sophomores, juniors, and seniors. You'll see that grow. I think what's important is we know that the work our online high school team did, and Kevin mentioned, is the advantage of having our own program is that 55% of our students enrolled right now are seniors. And so our team is doing the same interventions that our teachers at our face-to-face brick and mortar buildings are doing with kids, calling them, meeting them, talking to parents and doing that. When students went out of district and took online classes from other universities, we didn't have that same communication. And in June, the counselor got a message saying they didn't pass the class. I think that's a real big difference maker and a value added. And again, we continue to see the trend over time is that it's the graduating seniors that we're really meeting the needs for and building that. And we know most university programs now have some component that's online, and so it's also preparing them for that future of online learning in college. And then we celebrate our passing rate. You will see here the latest data published by the state. Online high school celebrates an 88%, between 85 and 88% success rate of passing classes. The state average is between 74 and 79, depending on the year that we look at. That is a huge for an online learning. Some of our comparable programs are in the 60s and 70s and 50s. And it really has to do with the team of teachers that are really engaging with the students and meeting that. Our last published data we can find from the state to compare online learning, in fact, Kevin even reached out to the DLD, Department of Digital Learning Department at OSPI, and they say, we don't have that data. There's not an easy way to pull it, but you'll see back in 8 and 9, we were one of the highest performing passage rate. At that time, we reported a 78.2%. You see we're even higher than that now. We are very competitive with the other very successful program in the state at Spokane Virtual Academy, which is about the same percentage rate. We know that this has a huge impact on learning, provides advanced courses, provides middle school options, allows for course makeup in a new delivery model. It allows out-of-sequence course happening. It alleviates personal or medical disruptions, and it opens up access to other programs, Snow Isle, ROTC, Running Start. And so with that, Kevin's going to share a few of those stories so you can meet our kids that we've served.
We reached out to our students in kind of a longitudinal study of sorts. So let me give you some quick little ways that we serve students. This is a student that dropped out of Everett Public Schools, moved to Spokane. Michelle Waddell and Joyce Stewart, who doesn't like to take a lot of credit for it, found him at a car show. I'll say twisted his arm, but he said he's never had teachers find him. He graduated. This is a selfie of he and I, the two of us on the stage at graduation. He came back and visited us last week, dressed up. He was excited. He was going to a job interview to go work down at the Amazon building. Really exciting. This is a young lady who just emailed back. She took advanced math in middle school, was able to get through an advanced math class. Now she's a biomedical engineer student at USC, and she's very thankful for the online high school program. This student, amazing young lady, She was able to take graduation requirements online and use that time to take a full year of physics and advanced math at her high school. And now she's in the engineering program. She's the president of the IEEE, the largest electrical engineering professional group in the world. She's down at Seattle U. She's in touch with NASA labs, and even worked with a company called Unit Energy, which is a competitor to Elon Musk's batteries that he uses in electric cars. Really, really amazing young lady. And this was one of our first students. This was a student from back in 2007. She had bulimia and diabetes. They told her she would never graduate from school. And she says that online high school saved her life. She took 16 online high school courses because she couldn't attend school regularly. She got into an Ivy League school, got her advanced degree, transferred to another prestigious school in San Francisco, and now she's the founder and executive director. She trains professionals, health professionals around the country in what is called the Diabulimia Helpline. Another amazing success story. Some powerful females, as I look back, that have STEM careers now because of and are thankful for what you all provided them with online high school.
So in summary, if we did our job tonight, we reviewed the history, we explained the unique components so you have a sense of what happens. We summarized our historical growth metrics and key data points, showed a connection to online high school and the success of our seniors and graduates in our system. And you heard about the impact of some of our individual students of online high school on their life and their future plans. And with that, we'll take questions.
Great, thank you. What a great overview. So if my son takes an online high school, will he have one of those kind of careers that you highlighted in the students?
No guarantee.
Just curious. I wonder if there's something magic here.
There's a little magic happening, but it's interesting how the reach out, there was, kind of an email went out and 20 more kids were saying similar, young adults now, similar kinds of stories.
That's great. No, thanks for sharing that personal side too.
I think your kid will do it on their own. Directors.
Okay, let's start over with Student Representative Pollock, and I'm certain you have something to say on this.
You got me speaking twice in one meeting, which I think is a record. Just putting that
we're
out
on the trajectory.
Yeah. Speaking from my own experience, in 7th grade, I went into online school full-time until 9th grade, and it was kind of my only option, but it was not a very good option for me because I just don't learn that way, which is why I was nodding my head the way I was, because it's very difficult to apply yourself when you're teaching yourself. You get very overwhelmed when you're looking at quadratic formulas and stuff on a computer screen, and you have no idea who even invented this thing to torture you with. So, I like it now. It's okay. But so with that, I was really wondering how you're able to support students who need online classes. It's a necessity for them, but don't learn that way. So, because I didn't have in-person teachers. It's very different what I did to what we have at Sequoia, or not. So how do you support students who don't really learn that way, but need to have that kind of environment?
Do you want to answer?
Sure. Well, I think the first easiest thing to say would be, like you had suggested, that online learning is not for everybody. And like you said, to be an online full-time student is a little difficult. That said, we have some amazing teachers that work with students in a lot of different ways. I mean, I've heard Mark on the phone discussing how to do a quadratic formula 6 wrong ways so that you can help a student understand how to do it the right way. We use Skype, we use video conferencing, we use, like I said, they'll get in their car, they'll drive to the student's school, they'll meet in usually the library, they'll sit down and they'll work on it together. So they can get the help that they need, and they also get the help that they want to be able to get the complete package of learning. So it's really kind of a testament to our staff to be able to help learners wherever they're at to get to where they need to be.
Okay, that's
I also think one of the differences versus the program you're in, we have a face-to-face brick and mortar place where they can come every day and there's always an online teacher staffing that room. They'll go out to the school and it's integrated in with your school's LMS, and so your parents can see that. and help support that in a way. And we do have our students with more than 3 classes. We have required on-site, in-person time. And then our teachers are Everett School District employees, and their caseload is significantly smaller, their student load, than what some of the teachers in some of the big for-profit business or for-profit school districts use, which I think is a direct relation to success.
I appreciate the weekly Naviance reports, because I don't get that from my daughter's brick and mortar teachers. But the second thing, I believe my daughter, I don't know if her friend does go to the program full time that we have here, or if it's a different program, but a friend with debilitating social anxiety disorder that uses online high school, either ours or someplace else, because going in the size of Jackson, the size of Sequoia terrifies her. And so my daughter has talked about how much she benefits from, I don't know if, again, if it's our program or a different program, but for her, how it's meeting her where she needs to be, which I think is really important, that we have a Sequoia, an online high school, and our comprehensive high schools for each and every one of our students. So thank you.
No questions. Great presentation, though. Thank you.
I have a question for those students at Jackson or Cascade or Everett who are taking classes. Is there an expense for them to take these classes online?
In most cases, the answer is no. So if students take it within their 6-period school day, it's just like one of their regular 6, they have 5 face-to-face at Jackson and 1 online, and that's. Some students are taking 7 classes.
Yes.
And so if you're taking the extra class, it's a $225
$5 for an extra class.
Extra class, but it's because you're taking beyond
the
number of
60.
classes. And we do have scholarships available both through the foundation and through some of our on-time graduation funds for students where that cost would be a particular barrier.
What about those students who may have band or orchestra or, they are in those type of, and they want to do band every year, and they need the extra class to get, is there a charge for them if they're taking band and that's an additional class?
So a 0-hour period doesn't count in the 6-period instructional day. So some band classes fall in that 0. But yes, initially, but then, like I said, if that's any kind of roadblock or barrier,
we have the foundation.
There's always scholarship funds available. So I will tell you that I think everyone moves everything to make sure money's not a barrier to kids for anything in our district. So
fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. There are so many for-profit organizations out there, as you know, that don't have the graduation rates like we do and the success rates. And I appreciate what we are doing for our students.
Thanks.
Vivek?
I just had a comment. I've had the opportunity to take online classes from both our online HS program and also from some of the for-profit programs that you mentioned. And I've, firsthand been able to experience, how good and how much better our program really is in comparison. Particularly, what I've noticed is that the way we give our curriculum to our students is it's not just reproducing what we teach in our brick and mortar classrooms online, but it's actually catered towards this online environment. And that's something that I really enjoyed and was able to actually enhance my learning as opposed to just reading something on my own. And also, you mentioned with the intervention, I was in 8th grade taking advanced math classes to get ahead. And I still remember that almost, I think every week, Mr. Ryder came to Gateway Middle School and helped us out learning some of these concepts, which we probably wouldn't have been able to pick up on our own. And so that was really, really helpful that we had the opportunity to do the online learning, but still had an instructor to kind of guide us along the way.
And I believe you were taking Algebra 2 as an 8th grader, so there wasn't enough students for the comprehensive middle school to offer an Algebra 2 class. So they sat in a math teacher's room at that school 5 days a week to get instruction, to have support, and Mark went out once a week, and Mr. Ryder. I think Mark Ryder back there teaches math and PE, and Laura White is our English, and Mark also does CCRS, our English teacher.
Okay, well, thank you. I also want to thank both our student representatives for their comments and once again proving the value of having students on the board to be able to offer that kind of insight that we just don't have a look into. So thank you both, and thank you to all four of you for being here tonight and providing this information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next information and discussion item is our second quarter financial update, and I believe Ruth Floyd is here to walk us through.
Thank you.
The numbers.
Good evening. The second quarter financial report is very similar to prior reports, and so I'll proceed fairly quickly, leaving time for questions, of course. I'm reviewing the alignment of budget to actual as part of our quarterly financial review and in support of the district's long-term financial planning. Board Docs also includes a companion monthly financial report for February. I'll provide an overview of 5 funds with a bit more detail on general fund. As you know, the major driver of revenues for our school district is student enrollment, and the annual average, FTE annual average for student enrollment is expected to be above last year, but still below where we had budgeted for this year by about 160 FTE. Projected revenues and transfers are expected to be $272.2 million, and this reflects $2.2 million in transfers from capital projects that happened in November, and then also $52 million in levy revenues. Our projected expenditures are expected to be $273.6 million, and well within our board appropriations of $280 million. And you can see the expenditure pattern compared to prior years as well there. Projected ending fund balance for general fund is $23.5 million. That's 8.6% of expenditures, which is well above our 5% target. And then in February, we were at $28.3 million in fund balance. In capital projects fund, our revenue trend is on track with prior years. As you can see, there's a spike in the fall and in the spring due to capital levy proceeds. This does not, however, include the bond proceeds from December 2016. I only included revenue here so you'd be able to see kind of the variations in the revenue. If I included the bond, the scale of it would be so out of whack that you wouldn't be able to see the revenue variations very well. And then our appropriations in the capital projects fund is $72.2 million. And as you can see, expenditures do vary quite a bit in capital projects fund. A lot of our work is done in the summer, and so you see that because of our bond projects, you do see that spike in July and August. And again, that will happen again this summer, and in fact to a greater degree, double or triple, I think, what happened this past summer. February ending fund balance for capital projects fund was $56.8 million, and again, you can see that the scale on this graph, the scale on the left, the dollar side, is very wide, and so your fund balance numbers, or the graph, the line, is going to be very compressed, unlike, for example, an expenditure report that only goes from 0 to 10 million. This goes from 0 to 80 million. And so that line, the red line between October and February, doesn't look like it's gone down much as far as fund balance, but it really is about $8 million. So the scale is a bit different when you look at fund balance than the other two graphs. Debt service fund, we had a February ending fund balance of $5.1 or $2 million. And the trends are very similar to prior years. NASB, about 1.8 million in February. And this is the newer slide that I've added, and it shows that as of last second quarter ending February 28th, compared to the current quarter ending February 28th, the students have spent down, each of the three comprehensive high schools have spent down their fund balance. And so you can see those numbers there, and compared to prior years in which they were in 16-17, they were increasing, but they're bringing them back down again, which is indicative, I think, of where we'll see August as well. And then Transportation Vehicle Fund, we have about $145,000 in that fund. I expect by the time I see you again for third quarter, that dollar amount will go down because we have 2 buses on order. We expect to get them soon, and we'll pay for those buses here shortly as well. Can I answer any questions? That was quick.
That's quick. I do have a question on the Associated Student Body Fund, slide 15. Look at the fund balance comparison.
We can't hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Look at the fund balance comparisons between the different schools. Is that number correct as far as I'm sure it is correct. Jackson has almost that much more?
Yes, they do. They've built up a considerable fund balance. They are a bigger school. They have more fundraising and that kind of thing. And so it would make sense to have a bit higher fund balance than the other schools. But it is definitely higher than
Thank you.
Others.
I piggyback off of that. I want to thank you for your work with them this year, because when they come and present their budgets, we probably won't be saying, and how do you plan on not having that fund balance? So thank you for that strong work with them to get those numbers down.
We also added a couple of slides that I think you'll like at the May ASB budget presentation.
We're also planning some potential structures that will.
I don't recall their budgets, but are these decreases in line with what they had budgeted? The changes between years?
Most of the schools had estimated that their budgets would be approximately the same or less, because we have been talking with them about this for a while. But I'm anticipating that by the end of the year, it will be a decrease larger than what they had anticipated in the budget.
Do we have conversations with them? Sorry for jumping in, same topic. Do we have conversations with them about appropriate fund balance, similar to what we do as a board?
No, I don't believe there is a policy that describes what we expect.
Not a policy, I'm just curious in terms of best practice or a range kind of thing.
When I talk with them, just, as a guideline, not necessarily anything that the school district has endorsed, I say, if it's over 25%, then you need to be thinking about getting that down.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good conversation to have. Yeah. So I was going to ask, I had sent an email out earlier this morning, and I know on slide 12, it's a much more significant than it looks because, but I think my question is a little bit around when we sell a bond, we pay debt service on it, correct? And interest?
Yes.
And so.
Which is in debt service fund.
And so I guess what I don't really understand is the balance between selling a bond and carrying such a high balance and paying those fees for such a long time, 14 months or so before the money's spent, and selling bonds more frequently to avoid those charges. But then I know you're sort of trying to understand where the market's going.
And the market, and it's a balance needing the funds well in time, and then how quickly that turns those projects get going also. And I'm sure that Mr.
And
Gunn has
this
other
might not be
thoughts.
your area, but like, when we have so the 2016 bond is going to fund projects for how many years? Do you know, Mike?
Typically, it's about 3 years.
And then how often do we sell?
We sell, I don't want to be flip about this, but we sell bonds as needed so that we don't run out of money. Right now, for example, what we're experiencing is a pretty typical spend down of a bond program. It's been about 14 months, like you say, since we sold the bonds. We've spent about 12 million of that. We're going to spend 25 more of that within the next probably 4 or 5 months, because we have 4 major projects coming up and the heavy construction period is the summer.
Right.
So New Elementary, North Middle, safety and security, and also 22 portables. So we're going to really go through that pretty quick. And we typically spend pretty much all of the money in the bond within 3 years. But when we get down to a certain balance, we want to make sure that we don't have to put some projects on hold by running out of the money.
Right.
So then we'll sell another bond. So right now, our cash flow, we're going to be updating that within the next month. Our cash flow projection is what we call it. That predicts when we'll need to sell bonds. But right now, we think we're going to need to sell bonds this fall.
Okay.
In order to not run out of money.
Yeah.
In August or September, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that in more detail.
There are also some
Arbitrage.
to work with. So all the bonds and sit on the money.
Can't like play the market and short sell or any of that. No. Up our ante a bit. No, no.
No, I'm not even saying that.
No, I know what you're saying.
So there's this notion of not selling them too quickly, not waiting too long, and then the factor is, what's the market doing? So I've worked very, very closely to try to.
Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, I had a question,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead, please.
Back to slide 7, please. So our expenditures in February are like $3 million greater than the previous 2 years, which I realize 3 million is not a substantial amount, but do you know, is that 3 million concentrated in one area necessarily, or is it pretty much just across the board? It's just an interesting little blip.
Yes, and I think that is a result of timing on both ends. So the prior year, we probably had a low month as far as the timing of when we were paying bills. And then this February, we probably had a bit of a high month. So it's being exaggerated, that difference in that particular month. But in general, yes, our expenses have gone up consistently every year. And that's what you're seeing here is the difference between, the cost of salaries and benefits mostly, but also other operating costs.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are on to 11.04, our enrollment outlook, and Mr. Gunn is going to walk us through that.
Good evening. This is an annual look at our enrollment, and what it really is a summary presentation of the enrollment report that is prepared for us by our consultant, Les Kendrick. He prepares this based on the October 1 count every year, and usually by around end of December, we'll have a draft version, sometimes a little bit earlier, and then usually by February, we'll prepare a presentation for you. Due to a variety of circumstances, this year it's been delayed till now. So what you're seeing is actually the updated enrollment projections that we use every year, and they're based on the October 1 counts. The objective for you tonight is to provide you a review of this presentation. We're going to also give you a little look into the past and then into the present in terms of how we use these enrollment projections and the impact that those have on our organization. And I was thinking of part of Ruth's presentation just now talked about that the budget was built on the enrollment projections about a year ago for the current year, and because we came in a little bit under projections, that it has affected our general fund budget. We have still grown from last year, it's just that we didn't grow as much. So that's an illustration of how important enrollment projections are to our budget process, as well as staffing and various other parts of our organization. In facilities planning, enrollment projections certainly drive a good portion of our capital bond development, levy planning, boundary revisions, use of and need for portables, use of space, purchasing properties, as well as the development of impact fees in our capital facilities plan. So it really does matter a lot to us. Some of this information, by the way, I think I've told you about every year and numerous times at bond presentations, so I'll just kind of skip through a little bit of this, or a real high-level skim. Les Kendrick is our consultant, prepares high, medium, and low projections. We also look at OSBI projections and then projection for enrollment based on population forecasts from the Office of Financial Management. Factors influencing projections: birth rates, historical trends, student roll up to the next grade level, and then also we try to, where our consultant adjusts the enrollment projections based on the housing market and what he sees coming down the road. Right now, there's kind of a perfect storm. I'll just kind of give you a summary. Our birth rates are up, which are driving elementary and then middle and high school enrollments. This is a desirable place to live. The economy is doing really well. The only real limiting factor right now is housing, available housing. And so what's happening right now is Les Kendrick predicts that there will be fewer single-family homes sold in the next couple of years, but more multifamily homes. And so that will continue to drive our enrollment, along with the other variables that I just mentioned. We also, when I say we, I'm going to say Karen Buckman, give her a shout out, because she takes the Les Kendrick's projections every year and works really hard and personally with the principals to develop a more finely tuned projection that she ultimately uses as part of the staffing process. So this is a look of about, I think it's 66 years of enrollments over the last 66 years or so, from 8,085 out to 19,877, and that doesn't count our preschool programs. That would push us up over 2,000. This is a slide that shows where we ended up, and this again is going to show that we ended up about 125 students under projections, and this year, which is an unusual year, OSPI's one-year projections were actually more accurate than Les Kendrick's. That's not very typical. Usually Les is a lot closer than OSPI. I'd say they're both very, very close, though.
Stopwatch is right twice a day.
Pardon me?
Even stopwatch is right twice a day.
Yeah. All right, so this is, I'll have a little bit of information from Les Kendrick's report. This shows the growth or decline in enrollment at various school districts in Snohomish County. You'll see Everett is growing the most, and some of the big declines we're seeing at other large districts in our area. For example, Marysville, Snohomish, and Edmonds. Those all declined, as well as Mukilteo. Good question.
Someone like Mukilteo, I think, are so similar to our whole economic and everything.
They are, and I suspect with Mukilteo, it probably has something to do with available land to build on.
Edmond might be the same way.
Yeah, and so anyway, Les Kendrick does do some work with other districts, but not all of them. I don't think he does work every year with Mukilteo. He did work a couple years ago there. But anyway, so the news here is that we're continuing our role as the fastest growing district in Snohomish County. One thing you should know, though, is North Shore is partially in Snohomish County, partially in King. They're counted and considered a King County school district. So even though we're shown as growing a lot, North Shore would have probably outstripped us if they had been shown as a Snohomish County district. This shows King, Pierce, Kitsap, and Snohomish counties. You can see certainly just because of sheer size, King County is growing the most, Pierce County next, Kitsap County next, and then Snohomish last, just because we've declined. Again, if you were to switch North Shore from King to Snohomish County, I think you'd see the Snohomish County would be growing a little bit more than Kitsap, but basically we're growing throughout the Puget Sound area for many of the reasons that I mentioned that we're growing. So here are some of those variables and trends, again, just to kind of run through them. Elementary and middle school enrollments came in pretty close to projections. The high school is where it dropped, and Les Kendrick's not really sure why. He's continuing to look at that and monitor it closely. In response to that, he's actually adjusted downward his high school projections for this update. So that's one of the adjustments that he's made. Birth rates are continuing to increase. And then, like I said, fewer single-family units are being sold, but probably more multifamily. Strong economy, and then the result of that is our share of the K-12 enrollment in the county has grown for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's supposed to continue. We have about 18.3% market share in the county. So now I'm going to go through some charts. Elementary school. The ones that go out, the projections that go out 6 years, those show the high, medium, and low projections from Les Kendrick. The one that goes out 6 years is the OSPI projection. You can see OSPI is pretty close to Les Kendrick's mid-range projection. So elementary school, pretty much a lot of growth. There is though a peak in 18 that you'll see after that a couple years decline. I'm going to mention that on the next couple of slides, so you'll see how it echoes into the middle and high school levels. Here's middle. This shows the peak in about 2020, and then again the decline, then it starts to grow. Look at what that does to the high school. Peaks in about 23, little bit of decline, and then it continues to grow. This is what it looks like when you combine them all together. And now I'm going to show you some charts. I'm going to come back here in just a minute and show you those together, because one of the things that's really important to understand is the high school level. After that, the time frame that we had just shown you, which is about 10 years, the high schools the enrollment growth will continue upward, which kind of illustrates more so than what I've just shown you, the need for the high school over the long period of time, the need for a new high school. So this is the 1 year projection. We're showing a growth for next year of 2001, and that is from the October 1 of 17 to the October 1 of 18 counts. So those are the October 1 counts of both years. So this is what Karen Buckman will be using to fine tune and then build the staffing and budgeting models on. So we're growing at the elementary, middle, and high school in that 1 year period. Here's a 10-year projection, showing, again, elementary, middle, and high, and you can see now we're growing more at the high school and elementary than the middle. Elementary has 6 grade levels, middle has 3, high school has 4. So what you're seeing, just based on that, is more growth at the high school level than you see at the other levels. In a minute, I'm going to break that apart by region, so you'll see that. Well, actually, here it is.
Very fast minute.
That was pretty quick, yeah. So this shows elementary, middle, and high, north, central, and south. It shows the first time frame, I think, is 18, 19, 20, 21, 20. So it's a 6-year time frame. The other one goes to a 10-year time frame. And you can see the only box in that whole chart there that does not show an increase is the middle school level in the northern region in the first 5 or 6 years. After that, it's growth pretty consistently everywhere. So here's that one that I showed, that I mentioned to you, where off to the right-hand side of the 10-year mark, you will continue to see all grade levels increase, especially the high school level. It'll continue to grow there. And this is really based on the projections for population forecasts. All right, portables. No presentation on enrollment finished without talking about portables, and this one does that. Shows in red the number of students where we are over capacity. So we're consistently over at the elementary school level, even with the construction and opening of the new elementary school number 18, which will show up between 17 and 23. So this number here, elementary, we're over capacity, 1,476 students, even after building the new elementary school. Part of that has to do with the reduction in class size due to K-3, and also the conversion across the district of all of our half-time or half-day kindergarten programs to full day. Both of those things, both of those changes reduced our capacities at our elementary levels. So what we show is in 2017, that's where we are right now. We have 117 portables. At the high school, the 38 that you see out over time is mostly at Jackson High School. I think it's 30 at Jackson High School, 8 at Cascade, and that's assuming no change in boundaries and no high school. And then the middle school is going to go up. So you notice both the middle and high school kind of plateau at 2023, because at that point there's not a lot of growth for the next 4 or 5 years at those grade levels. We are not showing the elementary levels right now because that is going to be dependent on the boundary process that we are nearly completing. I think tomorrow might be the last meeting of the boundary committee. So we'll have some interesting news for you there soon, where we'll show you what that all means. Okay, this is, I won't even take a lot of time to explain it. It shows the accuracy of our enrollment projections over time. And I think that I got some helpful input from the cabinet the other day, and I'm going to take that to heart and show you a new slide the next time you see this. But it's really showing that Les Kendrick and over time Orrin Farron, who used to do our enrollment projections, are consistently more accurate than OSPI in their enrollments. So that's really what that shows. Okay, so the next steps, again, we usually do this in February, and then we'll talk about the next steps in the middle part of the slide. We've already started quite a few of those things. For example, portables we've already ordered for next year. I'm sure the budget office is working on the budget for the next year, and we're getting ready on many of those other areas. But it'll roll into decision-making around staffing, variances, program locations, and other things. And then in September, we adjust all of that based on where the kids actually show up and how many kids. So the summary is that our enrollments projections are extremely important in much of the work that we do. We're continuing to grow at all grade levels in all regions, but particularly at the high school and elementary level in the south end, and that we are the fastest growing school district in Snohomish County. And that concludes my summary of Les Kendrick's report, and welcome any questions.
Anybody have a question for Mr. Gunn?
I have one. The growth in the south end.
Yes.
Multifamily home. Is that a duplex, triplex, or apartment first?
Any one of those?
Any one of those?
It just means it's not a detached single-family home.
Okay.
It is any of those others.
So it's not that multifamilies are living in a home, it's that they share walls. Families share walls or something.
It means that it's not a it's not a single-family home detached. They're connected, yes.
Okay, then the second thing is, construction behind my house, I get little flyers from Snohomish County of comment periods and stuff. Do we get such notice from the county about what's happening within our district?
Yes.
Okay, because just recently driving Balth Everett Highway up 180th, and I know this is what Chuck does, but proposed land use, proposed land use, proposed land use, and all those single-family homes that are up along 180th, that face 180th, I'd say half of them have, or I could be exaggerating, proposed land use, and that's property. I mean, they have acreage. And
Yes.
so, I mean, all of that's impacting our projections and could sway them depending on what actually goes into that land.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Terrifying, sorry.
I have a question on, oh, I moved my slide, hang on. Slide 19. So I looked at this earlier today and it kind of confused me because you're saying number of students over or under permanent capacity, and I'm looking at 2017 and it's saying that we have 385 students under capacity right now for this year?
It does.
Or for last year?
Yes, because what the high school capacity shows is all the capacity at our 4 high schools.
4.
Sequoia, Jackson, Cascade, and Everett.
Okay.
So-
Because I was doing the math between the 3 comprehensive, and I'm like, that's not adding up, but when you add Sequoia in there.
Yeah, it is mostly the extra space we have at Everett High School that is providing this capacity. So
How
this
much-
is based.
What is do you know off the top of your head, the enrollment versus capacity at Everett High?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay, it's not that important, I was just
Yeah.
curious how much difference. Okay.
That is one of the reasons why, over time, busing from Jackson northward might be a solution without tremendous expense, other than busing. Yeah.
Emotional expense, though.
I guess I was talking monetary. You're right. There would be other
Yes.
problems there.
When you look at the numbers of under and over capacity, what you're telling me, from what I see, is that when we start looking out to 2027, out to that far out, there probably would not be a need for a new middle school. Is that what you're saying?
I would look back at it. Which slide are you on?
This one.
The one that I'm looking at right here? So we have 22 portables currently at the middle school level. So if that is okay, then we don't need space at the middle school level.
But see, that's over 5 middle schools, right?
Right. That's right.
That's
So
over
it is
5
dispersed.
middle schools.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why we haven't been really talking a lot about the need
Middle
to build
school?
a middle school. I think it's a little bit further down the road,
Right.
especially when you compare it to the need for an elementary school and a high school.
In a high school.
Yes.
I'm just thinking with the rapid growth, and I agree with Director Mitchell when we say we went down 100 Bothell Everett Highway just south of 180, and you can see that they're going to be developing a new multi-level, multi-family complex.
Our property that's on that south side.
On the west
On the west side, south of 180th.
Okay, yeah.
They're going to be developing another, and I'm just wondering, I know you have algorithms for types of possibility for elementary, middle, and high school students.
We do.
The potential, what you're telling me, of the need for a new middle school is not there yet. At least looking out to 2027.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Right.
And I have a question of clarification. When you talk about regions, Evergreen and North are part of the North region, and there's only 1 in the Central region and then 2 in the South?
You're thinking middle schools?
I'm sorry, yes.
I'm thinking high schools.
I'm thinking middle school. When you divide by region and you look at growth at the middle school level, is it 2, 1, 2?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
What we do is,
You're talking about the supervision structure versus where the kids flow across regions.
Green split.
So if you look at the flow chart that we posted on the website in terms of where the kids go,
Yeah.
there are sort of mixtures of kids going to different places, respective of the region the school happens to be in.
Okay, got it.
and
I understand what you're saying.
And when we show a slide that has the regions broken down, we pretty much use
You're
the high
looking at
school
students,
boundaries.
not schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I get it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are now on to board annual goal.
Your most exciting topic of the year.
Yes. 11.05.
Well,
Okay.
the cabinet voted all green this year for you. And, it doesn't mean you have to keep them that
Then we
way.
have to pick over some yellow.
That's right. Well,
Yeah,
Either
I
we
was
didn't
wondering
think-
about a few of these.
either we didn't think they were, or everybody was chicken to give you a yellow. I'm not sure exactly what. We'll see. Actually, I think folks felt like there was progress based on how it was written and what the evidence was. So I think we've double and triple checked the information. There's only 2 of these planned this year. Typically we do 3, but we kind of delayed this one for a variety of other topics. So I think the question is, are there any you would like to change either the color or any corrections or adjustments you'd like to make in the verbiage in the goal progress report column before we post this for you?
Well, the few that I questioned a little bit was standard 2A, monitor instructional materials planning and implementation processes. And I guess maybe it's the implementation that I felt like we were a little light on.
So,
I know we've had one update on kind of a big overview. I did not have time to go back and look at all board meetings and stuff and kind of, but I wasn't really sure. It said 3 of 11 planned items. So if we've only done 3 of 11, that doesn't really suggest green. I mean, it means we're doing it, but I don't feel like we've done it thoroughly or completely.
That jumped out at me too, is just yellow's not bad, it just means it's not finished.
well, it's not about being finished. It's about being sort of on track. What's your judgment about on track?
Yeah, but at this point, 3 out of 11.
But was that not our goal? Was our goal to do 3 out of 11?
I don't know where 3 of
or
11
is it
came
that
from.
We've completed only 3 of 11.
I'm not sure.
I think what we're saying is based on what we see the plan to be. So far, you've done 3 of the things. In terms of your work plan this year.
Was that our goal to do 3 of the 11? Or was it our goal to do all of them, or half of them, or 1/3 percentage?
Well, as we looked at your plan for the year, the number of times you would touch this topic, we thought it would be 11. The other thing that so the other piece I think that's kind of important here is we've got a number of small adoptions, and they won't hit you until later in the year, right? So the timing of that is kind of important, and we didn't count heavily in this particular goal all of your saucer activities where you're looking at the implementation of the last couple of all of those different, right. So we felt that the combination of the things that are on track in instructional materials planning and implementation, the adoptions, things of that nature, we think you'll hit the 11 things, but you're not going to see a number of those smaller things until later in the year, and you may not feel that you've done what you really wanted to do in this goal. I don't think it's dramatically different from last year's. Which, as I recall, we changed the wording on this one a bit. I'd have to go back and check. So if you want to make that yellow, we can make that yellow. 2A, yellow?
Well, because I'm looking at like the 5A, community, 26 board breakfast.
Wait, let's finish this one first.
Well, no, because I was comparing it.
Oh.
I was just comparing that 26 board breakfast community to inform decision making, that's completed, it's green, where this isn't completed, but it's got a green.
Yeah.
So that was my.
I think it should be yellow.
Okay. Yellow it is.
Oaksfield.
What else?
The only other one is interesting because I read Standard 5A, and it said participate in community engagement designed to inform strategic decision-making. And when I looked, the 26 board breakfasts, I felt like that wasn't, well, first of all, we each did a portion of that, which is fine. You know, it's a goal to collectively, but it wasn't representative of a broader community, you know, in terms of variety. But then I went down and read C, and it says advanced district strategic priorities. And then we did have a lot of the community outreach there through the bond and levy activities. And then I couldn't decide why we had A and C because they seem so similar. One's participate in community engagement and the other one's advance the priorities through community engagement, essentially. But anyhow, that's maybe a summer workshop fine-tuning thing. So I'm comfortable leaving things that way. I just wanted to share my thoughts, I guess, on that.
So 2 of them switched to yellow.
No, I would say they were both green.
Standard 5A?
Standard 5.
No, that's not what I said. I was just saying if C wasn't there, I would say A should be yellow, but then we have C, and so it's kind of, they all get at community engagement, just different focuses, and I just wanted to check and see if everyone feels comfortable that.
I feel comfortable with it because this particular year, when you consider 26 board breakfasts, that is really something we did that was outstanding, out of the ordinary. I mean, we didn't come close to that number last year.
Well, we did.
We
did. 2 years in a row, we've done them.
Not that number.
Yeah, we did. 26 is each one of us going to our schools.
Yeah, we did it last year.
We did that last year.
Oh, okay. And then also 20 community presentations on top of
Yeah.
that? Last year?
Not last year, no,
No.
that's new for this year.
See, so when you add the 2 together.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're in agreement, those stay green.
Okay.
Is that a quick summary? Okay, so 1 yellow and the rest stay green?
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other comments or concerns or conversation? No? Okay. I think
Good.
we're finished then.
Got it. Thanks.
That means it's,
Time for Larry, I think.
it is. Section 12.0, unfinished business, and we have a policy to re-review.
Well, thank you. And to bring some back for first reading after board feedback, policy 2312, copyright compliance, has been amended to incorporate feedback from the board on the language within the policy to reflect that the spirit of the policy is to make people aware, particularly staff, but secondarily students, that they would need to be aware of and comply with federal copyright laws. The language you can see proposed in front of you as revision is to strike severe penalties from the procedure language and merely say penalties may be imposed for unlawful copying or use of printed materials.
Is there any discussion or questions? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and move this to second reading at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to look into that for us. We are on to new business, and there is no new business this evening, which takes us to our upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohen.
All right, 14.1 is a description of your special meeting that's now scheduled for April 17. It was a reschedule of this capital planning post-bond work session. It's, I believe, an evening meeting, and it's coming up next week, a week from today. Item 14.2 is your April 24 special meeting. It is a state of school review analysis. It will involve a number of different people, in sort of carousels, and there is a great deal of work for you to do in that meeting. Joyce went through it with me today. I'm sure you'll do it in less time than it took me. May 1 is a special meeting. It is your annual get-together with the Equity and Access Advisory Council. They'll be updating you on their work and sharing with you their advice and talking with you about the next year's work.
Is that a morning or an evening meeting?
May 1?
It's afternoon.
Usually they're in the evening because those folks aren't available
Yeah.
in the morning. Yeah.
Okay.
You should have my RSVP that I'll be out of town for work. I think I sent you that, so that's one of my favorite meetings, and I just can't.
So May 8 is a regular meeting, and it's got a very hefty strategic plan update conversation in it for you. We've got middle school math instructional materials for first reading, so your count will go from 4 to 5. And you've got ASB budget presentations, a number of other reports out of endorsement assignments. You've got a fairly substantial consent agenda on this meeting. And then we're hoping we've got a couple of recognition items for you.
I do so love to hear SB budget presentation, but I must let you know that I will not be able to attend.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. We did have a placeholder this evening for executive session, which we will not need to take this evening. So with that, we move to section 16.0, which we all know is adjournment. That concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. This meeting is adjourned.
Strong work.